The unseen scribe of time's labyrinth, the labyrinth stretched on endlessly, its twisting corridors seemingly designed by the hand of an unseen deity. The protagonist, weary and disoriented from his endless cycles, trudged through the dimly lit passages with a growing sense of urgency. He had been searching for something, his lost chronicles, his identity, or perhaps salvation. As he turned a corner, a faint light caught his eye, illuminating a hidden chamber. With trepidation he approached, his heart racing as the door creaked open. Inside, he found an ancient tome bound in tarnished gold and etched with symbols he'd never seen before. A soft whisper echoed through the room. "The key to unlocking your destiny lies within these pages." He reached out tentatively, feeling a surge of energy course through him as his fingers brushed the worn leather cover. Suddenly, the labyrinth around them seemed to shift, and he found himself standing before a woman cloaked in shadows. Her eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and he felt a strange compulsion to obey her every command. "I am Mira," she said, "and I will guide you on your journey." As they ventured deeper into the labyrinth, the protagonist found himself growing more confident, his memories of past failures fading away like mist in the morning sun. But as the days passed and their group encountered more obstacles, he could feel a sinister presence lurking just beyond the edges of his perception. Kel, an enigmatic adversary with a twisted smile and eyes that seemed to bore into his soul, pursued them relentlessly. He sought the power contained within the protagonist's lost chronicles, using his own mysterious abilities to manipulate time to his advantage. Each encounter left the protagonist feeling more desperate, his resolve wavering as he struggled against Kel's onslaught. Just when all hope seemed lost, a mischievous sprite appeared before them. Zephyr, a being of pure energy and laughter, offered the protagonist aid in deciphering the cryptic clues scattered throughout the labyrinth. Together, they began to unravel the secrets hidden within the ancient tome, each revelation bringing them one step closer to understanding the world's creation. As they delved deeper into the mysteries of time and history, the protagonist found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about himself and his place in the universe. With Mira's guidance, Zephyr's knowledge, and the power of the ancient artifact, he began to unlock the true potential within himself, a power that could either save or doom the world. Inside the labyrinth's heart, the protagonist Mira and Zephyr continued their journey, the ancient tome bound in tarnished gold clutched tightly by the protagonist. The air grew thicker with magic as they ventured further, the echoes of forgotten memories whispering through the stone corridors. "We are close," Mira whispered, her eyes glinting with determination and a hint of fear. "The chamber lies ahead." Zephyr flitted around them playfully, his laughter like the tinkling of wind chimes. "What do you think is inside?" he asked, curiosity evident in his voice. "An artifact that holds the key to unlocking your forgotten past," Mira replied, her tone grave. Their footsteps echoed as they approached a massive stone door, etched with symbols and runes. The protagonist felt an odd sensation coursing through him, as if a connection was being made between his heart and the ancient magic that pulsed within the labyrinth. Kel's voice boomed from behind them. "I will not let you take that artifact." The group turned to face their adversary, who stood at the entrance of another passageway, a cruel smile on his lips. His eyes seemed to burn with an unnatural light, and the air around him crackled with power. "You have no chance," Kel said, stepping closer. "Your past is mine." The protagonist felt a surge of anger within him, his heart racing as he gripped the ancient tome tighter. In that moment, he realized he would not let Kel take what was rightfully his. He closed his eyes and focused on the connection to the labyrinth's magic, feeling it coursing through his veins. As he opened his eyes, time seemed to slow around him, as if he had gained control over it for a fleeting moment. The group watched in awe as Kel stumbled, unable to move or react. "We must go," Mira said urgently, "before the effect wears off." The group rushed through the stone door and down a long hallway lined with bookshelves, each one filled with ancient texts and scrolls. Zephyr darted ahead, his laughter echoing through the library-like chamber. At the far end of the room stood a pedestal with an open book on top, pulsating with power. The protagonist approached cautiously, reaching out to touch it. As his fingers brushed against the cover, he felt another surge of energy coursing through him. He looked up to see Mira standing behind him, her eyes wide. "What have you done?" she asked in awe. "You've unlocked your powers." The protagonist smiled, feeling a new sense of purpose and determination. "I won't let Kale take my past," he said firmly. "I will find the truth about myself and save the world." Mira nodded, her expression thoughtful. "You have much to learn, but you are on the right path," she said cryptically. "We must rest for now. Tomorrow we continue our journey." Des. The unseen scribe of Time's labyrinth. In the heart of the labyrinth, the trio found themselves in a long hallway lined with bookshelves that stretched far beyond the light provided by flickering torches. The air was thick and damp, filled with dust motes dancing in the shadows cast by the meager illumination. The protagonist could feel the weight of Kel's presence, ever closer, his adversary lurking somewhere nearby, waiting for an opportunity to strike. He clutched the ancient tome bound in tarnished gold, feeling its power coursing through him whenever he held it tight against his chest. Mira, her face a mask of concentration and determination, scanned each bookshelf meticulously, searching for the next clue that would lead them closer to their goal. Zephyr flitted from book to book, whispering secrets about the world's creation and hints at the hidden truth behind the labyrinth. The protagonist felt his heart race as Kel closed in, the whispers of the mischievous sprite, a comforting reminder of the strength within him that he had only just begun to understand. He tightened his grip on the artifact, feeling its warmth grow stronger with every passing moment. "We must find the next clue," Mira said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The labyrinth is full of traps and obstacles, but I have faith that we can uncover the truth together." As they continued their search, Zephyr revealed that one particular book held a significant clue to their progress. He flitted around the protagonist's shoulder playfully, pointing towards an open book on top of a nearby bookshelf. With a mix of relief and apprehension, the protagonist approached the shelf where Zephyr had indicated. The open book lay atop it, its pages yellowed and worn with age. He carefully lifted the book and felt his heart skip as he recognized the title, The Chronicles of the Unseen Scribe. "This is my lost chronicle," the protagonist exclaimed, feeling a surge of emotion well up within him. But how could it be here? Mira approached, studying the book intently. "It appears that this particular copy was left behind to guide you on your journey," she said, her voice filled with intrigue. "We must decipher its cryptic clues if we are to continue our quest." As they delved deeper into the labyrinth, the protagonist discovered more about himself and his forgotten past through the chronicles. He felt a growing sense of purpose as he unraveled the mysteries hidden within the pages. But with each discovery came a greater understanding of the danger that lay ahead. The group continued their trek, guided by the cryptic clues and prophecies found within the chronicles of the unseen scribe. They knew Kel was close, lurking in the shadows, waiting for the opportune moment to strike. But they also knew that they possessed an ancient artifact capable of controlling time itself, a weapon that could turn the tide in their favor if they could only learn to wield it effectively. In the heart of the labyrinth, the protagonist, Mira, and Zeph stood before an enormous stone door etched with intricate carvings depicting scenes from their world's creation. The air was thick with anticipation as they knew this was a turning point in their journey. "This must be it," Mira whispered, tracing her fingers over the carvings, "the entrance to the heart of the labyrinth." Zephyr hopped excitedly on one foot, his eyes wide with curiosity. "I wonder what secrets lie within?" The protagonist hesitated, feeling a growing unease. "We cannot forget Kel's pursuit. He will not rest until he has the chronicles and the artifact." Mira nodded solemnly. "It's time to find out what we came here for." "Are you ready?" The protagonist took a deep breath, steeled his resolve, and pushed the massive stone door open. Inside, they found themselves in a long hallway lined with bookshelves that seemed to stretch on for miles. The air was damp, heavy with the scent of ancient parchment and dust. They walked deeper, their footsteps echoing off the stone walls. until they reached a quiet corner where an open book lay atop a pedestal. The protagonist approached it cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. He picked up the book, feeling its power surge through him as he recognized it to be one of the lost chronicles. Mira leaned over his shoulder, her eyes gleaming with curiosity. "It looks like another piece of your past is revealed." The protagonist flipped through the pages, each one revealing a fragment of his forgotten memories and the history of their world. As he read, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Meanwhile, Cal crept silently through the labyrinth, listening intently for any signs of the protagonist's movements. He knew they were getting closer to uncovering the truth about the world's creation, and he would not let them succeed without a fight. As the protagonist continued reading, Mira noticed something strange. "Wait," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This passage mentions an artifact with immense power, one that can manipulate time." The protagonist looked up from the book, his eyes widening in shock and disbelief. "What did it say?" Mira handed him the book. "It says the artifact is hidden somewhere within the labyrinth, but finding it requires solving a riddle." Zephyr grinned mischievously. "I think I can help with that." As they delved deeper into the riddle, they felt Kel closing in, his presence growing stronger with each passing moment. The stakes were higher than ever as they knew that not only their lives, but the fate of their world hung in the balance. They had to find the artifact before it fell into the wrong hands. The unseen scribe of Time's labyrinth, in a quiet corner of the chamber, the protagonist sat cross-legged, the ancient tome bound in tarnished gold resting on his lap, as he traced its worn pages with trembling fingers. He read aloud, "To find the artifact that binds time, seek out the heart within the heart." Mira stood nearby, her eyes reflecting a mixture of concern and curiosity as she watched him. Zephyr fluttered around them, giggling softly. The tension in their small group was palpable, the weight of Kel's pursuit looming over them like a dark cloud threatening to burst at any moment. "What does that even mean?" Mira asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The heart within the heart." "It sounds cryptic." Zephyr zipped forward and landed on Mira's shoulder. "It's a riddle," he said playfully, his voice like a gentle breeze rustling leaves. "A test to ensure only those worthy of finding the artifact can unlock its secrets." The protagonist closed the ancient tome with a sigh, standing up to face Mira and Zephyr. "Then let's find this heart within the heart," he said determinedly. "I have a feeling that if we don't find it soon, Kale will catch up to us." As they ventured deeper into the labyrinth, the stone corridors grew more treacherous and unfamiliar. They navigated narrow passages, climbed steep staircases, and crossed chasms spanned by fragile bridges that groaned under their weight. Each step brought them closer to their goal, but also closer to Kel's grasp. Finally, they arrived at a long hallway lined with bookshelves, identical in appearance to the ones they had passed earlier. But as the protagonist stepped into the hall, he felt something different about it, a strange energy pulsing through the air like a heartbeat. He looked around, his eyes wide with realization. "I think we're in the right place," he said, a sense of urgency creeping into his voice. "The heart within the heart must be hidden here." Mira nodded, her expression serious as they began to search for the artifact. They moved silently down the hallway, their eyes scanning every book, every shelf, every nook and cranny. And then at last Mira spotted it, a small, unassuming door tucked away in a hidden alcove. "There," she whispered, pointing to the door. "That must be it." The protagonist approached the door, his heart pounding with anticipation and fear. He reached out and touched the cold stone, feeling a surge of power course through him. He took a deep breath, then pushed open the door, revealing a small chamber beyond. Inside, they found an open book on top of a pedestal, its pages glowing softly in the dim light. The protagonist stepped forward, his eyes drawn to the title, The Chronicles of the Unseen Scribe. He reached out and picked up the book, feeling the weight of destiny resting heavy in his hands. "This is it," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. "We've found it." Mira looked at him, her eyes filled with admiration. "You did it," she whispered. "You found the artifact that can manipulate time." Zephyr zipped around them, laughing in delight. "Congratulations," he exclaimed. "Now you have the power to stop Kyle and save our world." The protagonist looked down at the book, feeling a strange mixture of joy and dread. He knew that with this artifact came great responsibility, and he wasn't sure he was ready for it. But one thing was certain, he wouldn't give up without a fight. As they left the chamber, they heard the distant sound of footsteps echoing through the labyrinth. Cal had found them at last. The race was on to claim the artifact and secure their place in history. They would face many challenges ahead, but together they would stand strong and fight for their future. Inside the labyrinth's heart, the air thickened as Mira Zephyr, and the protagonist stood before the massive stone door guarding the chronicles of the unseen scribe. The pulsating energy that radiated from it seemed to be drawing them in. "This is it," whispered Mira, her voice barely audible above the labyrinth's whispers. The heart of the labyrinth. Zephyr flitted around them playfully, his laughter echoing through the chamber. "And the heart of our adventure," he chimed. The protagonist glanced at Zephyr, a hint of a smile gracing his wary face as he nodded in agreement. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath, feeling the labyrinth's energy pulse through him, whispering ancient secrets that seemed to echo memories long forgotten. "Ready?" Mira asked softly, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. The protagonist opened his eyes, meeting hers, and nodded. "Let's do this." Together they pushed against the heavy stone door. It groaned as it moved slowly, revealing a long hallway lined with bookshelves. The light from outside flickered, casting eerie shadows over the ancient tomes bound in tarnished gold. They stepped into the dimly lit chamber, their footsteps echoing through the silence. The quiet corner of the room held a small group's camp, blankets strewn about, discarded food wrappers, and worn books scattered across the floor. Mira approached one such book, her eyes narrowing as she read its title aloud. "The Chronicles of the Unseen Scribe," she murmured. "It seems we have found our prize." A sudden rustle behind them made everyone turn, their hearts racing as Cale stepped into view, a sinister smile playing across his lips. "I thought I might find you here," he said, his eyes locked onto the artifact. The protagonist stepped forward, his gaze never leaving Cal's. "You won't get your hands on it." Cal laughed, and for a moment the tension eased. "Of course not. But I can make you an offer," he said, reaching into his cloak. He produced an ancient tome bound in tarnished gold, identical to the one before them. "This one has its own secrets." Zephyr's laughter rang out once more, and Mira's eyes narrowed. "You think we'd trade our chance at stopping you for a trinket?" Cal shrugged. "It's up to you," he said, the smile never leaving his face. "But remember, time waits for no one." As Cal disappeared back into the labyrinth's twisting corridors, the group turned their attention back to the artifact. The protagonist reached out, his fingers grazing its cover. It felt warm against his touch, pulsating with an energy that seemed to call to him. He closed his eyes and whispered, I know what we have to do." There. The unseen scribe of time's labyrinth within the heart of the labyrinth, the small group walked along a long hallway lined with bookshelves that seemed to stretch on forever. The air was thick with the scent of ancient parchment and dusty spells, whispers of forgotten stories lingering around them like ghosts. The protagonist clutched the chronicles of the unseen scribe tightly, his heart racing as he felt a strange pull towards the tome. Mira walked beside him, her eyes focused on the bookshelves, searching for something specific. Zephyr flitted about, playfully trying to trick them with misdirection as they navigated the maze-like corridor. "Are we close?" asked the protagonist, his voice barely above a whisper. Mira's eyes flicked towards him, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "We are getting closer," she replied, her gaze returning to the bookshelves. Suddenly, an ominous rumble echoed through the labyrinth. Cal appeared from around a corner, his face twisted with rage and determination. He had sensed their presence and was ready for confrontation. "You shouldn't have come this far," he sneered, brandishing a dagger in one hand and the other tome in the other. "Give me the chronicles or I will make you regret ever entering this labyrinth." Mira stepped between them, her eyes flashing with anger. You won't lay a finger on him, she growled, her voice barely restrained. Zephyr giggled, darting around Kel and leading the group towards a quiet corner of the chamber. The protagonist followed closely behind, clutching the chronicles to his chest as they moved through the labyrinth. He could feel its power pulsing within him, urging him to take action against Kel. The group's camp was set up in a long hallway lined with bookshelves. Mira sat cross-legged on the ground, her eyes closed as she focused on an open book resting on top of the ancient tome bound in tarnished gold. Protagonist and Zephyr stood nearby, each deep in thought. "What do you make of this?" Zephyr asked, fluttering around the protagonist, his wings glinting with moonlight filtering through the cracks in the stone ceiling. "The prophecy is clear. The key to saving the world lies within its heart." Mira's eyes snapped open, and she looked at them both. "You know what that means," she said, a hint of sadness in her voice. "We must venture deeper into the labyrinth." "I'll go," the protagonist said quickly, his resolve hardening. "Mira, I won't let you face Kel alone." She smiled sadly at him. "You are strong, but we need Zephyr's guidance," she replied, her eyes flicking towards the sprite. "We will move together." Zephyr giggled mischievously. "Very well, but I warn you now, the deeper we go, the more dangerous it becomes." He looked at Mira. "The heart of the labyrinth guards a secret, one that even I fear to know. We'll face whatever awaits us," the protagonist said, his eyes burning with determination. Together, as they moved deeper into the labyrinth, the corridors grew darker and more treacherous. The air was heavy with tension, and they could sense Kel's presence nearby, stalking them through the shadows. Finally, they stood before a massive stone door, etched with ancient symbols that seemed to dance in the flickering torchlight. With a deep breath, the protagonist reached out and touched the symbols, feeling a jolt of energy surge through him. The door creaked open, revealing a long hallway lined with bookshelves, the heart of the labyrinth. Zephyr darted ahead, his laughter echoing off the stone walls as he led them deeper into the room. As they reached a quiet corner, the protagonist's eyes widened in shock at what lay before them: the chronicles of the unseen scribe, bound in tarnished gold and covered in dust. "This is it," Mira breathed, tears streaming down her face. The heart of the labyrinth. As they approached the chronicles, Kel suddenly appeared, a triumphant smile on his face. "I've been waiting for you," he said, his eyes locked onto the ancient tome. "Give me that, and I shall spare your lives." A tense standoff ensued, but Mira stood firm. "Never," she snapped, her voice echoing through the chamber. "These chronicles are meant for those who will protect the world, not for a power-hungry madman like you." Kel sneered, drawing his dagger. "Very well, if you won't hand them over peacefully, I shall take them by force." With a cry, the protagonist lunged at Kel, but Mira grabbed him and pulled him back. "No," she said sternly. "We have other options. We must use the artifact we found to our advantage." Zephyr's eyes lit up with excitement. "Ah, yes. The key to saving the world lies within its heart." He flitted over to a bookshelf and pulled out another tome, handing it to Mira. "This will help you control time. Use it wisely." Mira accepted the tome and looked at the protagonist with determination in her eyes. "We'll use this artifact to protect the chronicles," she said firmly. "Together, we can stop Kel once and for all." The group stood ready as Kel charged towards them, his dagger raised high. As he neared, Mira opened the time-bending tome and focused her power on Kel. Time seemed to slow around him, giving the protagonist an opening to strike. With a cry of defiance, he lunged at Kel, driving him back with a powerful blow. As Kel stumbled backwards, his grip on the dagger faltered, and the chronicles slipped from his grasp. Mira and Zephyr moved in quickly, snatching the artifact before Kel could react. With a triumphant cry, the protagonist seized the chronicles, clutching them close to his chest as they prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the group retreated deeper into the labyrinth, Mira looked back at the spot where they had faced Kel. "We did it," she whispered, her voice filled with relief and pride. "The chronicles are safe. For now," Zephyr said softly, "but our journey is far from over. We must continue to uncover the truth of this world's creation." and stop Kale once and for all. The unseen scribe of time's labyrinth, the group made their way through the labyrinth, each step a testament to the passage of time itself. Mira guided them through the winding stone corridors, her eyes constantly scanning for any sign of Kull. The air grew colder as they ventured deeper into the maze, the ancient walls seeming to whisper secrets long forgotten. They reached a massive stone door, ornate and adorned with intricate carvings depicting scenes of creation. Mira hesitated, her eyes scanning the symbols etched upon its surface. With a deep breath, she pushed it open, revealing a long hallway lined with bookshelves that stretched as far as the eye could see. Zephyr giggled, flitting ahead to explore the vast library. The group followed, their footsteps echoing off the stone walls. As they delved deeper into the stacks, Mira's eyes widened, a look of recognition passing over her face. "This is it," she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. The heart of the labyrinth. They found themselves in a quiet corner of the chamber, surrounded by towering bookshelves filled with ancient tomes bound in tarnished gold and leather. In the center sat an open book on top of a pedestal. Mira approached it cautiously, her fingers trembling as she traced the familiar script etched upon its cover. "The Chronicles of the Unseen Scribe," she murmured, awestruck by the discovery. "I've heard tales of their power, but I never thought I'd actually find them." The protagonist stepped closer, his heart pounding with anticipation and fear. He could feel Kull's presence growing stronger, drawing nearer to their location. Mira quickly closed the Chronicles and slipped it into her robes, turning to face the group. "We must leave," she urged. "Kale will be here soon." As they hurried through the labyrinth, Zephyr playfully darted ahead, leading them deeper into its twisting corridors. They found themselves in another long hallway lined with bookshelves, this one smaller and more intimate than the first. In a quiet corner of the room, Mira pulled out the Chronicles, her eyes scanning the pages as she whispered ancient incantations. The air grew heavy, time seeming to slow around them as Mira chanted. Suddenly, a bright light filled the room, and they found themselves standing in the heart of the labyrinth. Towering statues of long-forgotten beings surrounded them, their eyes glowing with an eerie light. In the center stood Kull, his face twisted into a cruel smile. "I see you finally found what you were looking for," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "And I must admit it is quite impressive, but if you think for one moment that I will let you keep it, you are sorely mistaken." Mira stepped forward, her eyes never leaving Kull's. "You can try all you want," she said, her voice steady and cold. "But we will not let you take the Chronicles from us." Kull laughed, reaching into his robes. From within, he produced another tome, its cover glowing with an otherworldly light. "This artifact is mine," he declared, advancing on them with a sinister grace. "And if you value your lives, I suggest you hand over the Chronicles now." The group exchanged nervous glances, knowing that they were outnumbered and outmatched. But as Kale approached, Zephyr appeared by the protagonist's side, his eyes alight with determination. "We will not give in," he declared, brandishing a dagger. "We will fight." Together, they stood their ground against Kull, their hearts pounding with fear and determination. The battle was fierce, each side determined to claim victory. But as the minutes stretched on, it became clear that they were no match for Kull's power. Just when all hope seemed lost, Mira spoke a final incantation, her voice ringing out through the heart of the labyrinth. Time seemed to slow once more, and as Kale reached out to seize the Chronicles, they slipped from Mira's grasp and flew toward the protagonist. With a cry of defiance, he caught them, feeling their power surging through him. Time itself seemed to shudder around them, the statues cracking and crumbling as Kale roared in frustration. "You will never take what is rightfully mine," the protagonist shouted, his voice echoing through the heart of the labyrinth. With a final burst of energy, he struck Kull, sending him tumbling to the ground. As the adversary lay defeated, the group retreated deeper into the labyrinth, knowing that their journey was far from over. They had uncovered the truth about the world's creation and realized the protagonist was not just a scribe, but the key to saving or dooming the world. The labyrinth's heart pulsed ominously in time with the group's racing hearts. They stood before a massive stone door etched with arcane symbols, their breaths fogging in the chill. Zephyr's laughter echoed through the chamber as he darted between Mira and the protagonist. "Ah, my friends, what brings you to this quiet corner of our labyrinthine home?" He landed on the edge of an open book, perched like a curious bird. Mira stepped forward, her eyes never leaving the door. "I fear Cal may find us soon. We must act quickly if we wish to remain ahead." The protagonist frowned, his gaze flickering between Mira and Zephyr. "What do you make of this door? Are there any clues or hidden secrets within?" He gestured towards the symbols etched on its surface. Zephyr flitted closer, examining the markings with a knowing smile. "Ah, my dear friend, these are not just simple symbols. They're keys to unlocking more of our world's creation." His eyes gleamed with excitement. "Then let us attempt it," Mira said firmly, drawing a deep breath. She reached out, her hand hovering over the door as if she could sense its power. The air crackled around them as the symbols began to glow, the stone door shifting slightly beneath their touch. A sudden rumble echoed through the labyrinth, making them jump. "Cal," Mira whispered, her eyes narrowing. They exchanged a look of grim determination before turning back to Zephyr. "Quickly, tell us what you know." Zephyr flitted to the door, hovering in front of it as if studying its secrets. "Aha, I see. This is no ordinary door, but rather an entrance to another part of our world's creation," he said excitedly. "It requires a key, one that can only be found within." The protagonist nodded, his eyes searching the room for any clues. The air grew tense as they listened, waiting for Kel's approach. "You have but moments to find it," Mira warned, her hand still resting on the door. Zephyr darted around the room, examining each artifact and bookshelf. Suddenly, he landed on a tome lying open atop another. "Ah, this is the key." He pointed excitedly at the tome. "The chronicles of the unseen's creation can unlock this door." Mira's eyes widened with realization. She turned to the protagonist, who was already reaching for the tome. "Be careful," she warned, her voice low and urgent. "Cal is near." The protagonist grabbed the tome, feeling its power pulsing through him as he closed his fingers around it. As he did, a sudden gust of wind whipped through the room, snuffing out the flickering candles. "There you are." Cale's voice echoed through the darkness, cold and calculating. "I have been searching for this tome for far too long." Mira stepped protectively in front of the protagonist, her eyes blazing with determination. "You will not take it from us," she said firmly. Cale's laughter echoed through the labyrinth as he materialized before them, a wicked smile on his face. "Oh, I have no intention of taking it from you, my dear Mira, but I do wish to offer you something in exchange." He held out another tome, its cover gleaming with an eerie light. "What is it?" the protagonist asked, his hand tightening around the chronicles of the unseen scribe. "This," Cale said, "is a time-bending tome. With it, you can manipulate time to your advantage." His eyes flickered with greed as he spoke. "I will let you go if you give me what I want." Mira's eyes narrowed, her gaze never leaving Cole. "You underestimate us," she said coldly. "We have no need for your offer." Cale's smile grew wider, a dangerous glint in his eyes. "Very well," he said calmly. "Then I shall take it by force." His hand shot out, grasping for the chronicles of the unseen scribe. The protagonist reacted instinctively, slamming the tome into Cal's palm with all his might. The impact sent both of them sprawling back as the labyrinth shook around them. Mira took advantage of the distraction to grab another dagger from a nearby bookshelf, her eyes never leaving Cal. Cal slowly rose to his feet, clutching his injured hand. "You will regret this," he growled, his gaze locked onto the protagonist. "This is far from over." The group retreated deeper into the labyrinth, their hearts racing as they heard Cal's footsteps echoing behind them. The air grew tense with anticipation and fear, but they pressed on, determined to find the key to unlocking the massive stone door. As they ran, Zephyr flitted between them, offering words of encouragement and guidance. "Don't worry," he said cheerfully, "we will get through this." His laughter echoed through the labyrinth as they continued their journey deeper into its heart. The group reached a small camp near the edge of the labyrinth, setting up their makeshift shelter for the night. The air was thick with tension as they discussed their next move. "We must find a way to get past Kull," Mira said firmly. "He will not rest until he has what we have." "I have an idea," the protagonist said, his eyes flickering with determination. "Zephyr, can you help us unlock more of the labyrinth's secrets?" Zephyr nodded eagerly. "Of course. I am always happy to assist." His laughter echoed through the camp as they settled in for the night, their hearts filled with hope and fear as they prepared for the challenges ahead. The unseen scribe of Time's labyrinth, the moon cast eerie shadows throughout the labyrinth as the group went deeper into its depths. Cal, ever present and lurking, observed them from afar. "Mira, what do these symbols mean?" the protagonist asked, pointing at an intricate carving on one of the stone walls. She pursed her lips, examining it closely. "I'm not sure. It seems like a map of sorts, but to where I can't say." Zephyr flitted it about, hovering near the carvings. "Ah. This one here shows the entrance to another part of our world's creation." Mira raised an eyebrow at him. "World's creation? What do you mean by that?" "Come closer and I shall tell you," Zephyr replied, flitting towards a quiet corner of the chamber. The protagonist approached cautiously, Mira following close behind, sat down together, listening to Zephyr explain about the labyrinth's role in the world's creation and how their journey was part of something much bigger than they could imagine. Suddenly, Cal appeared from behind them. "You should not seek knowledge beyond your grasp," he said menacingly. Zephyr giggled mischievously. "Oh, I think we've already found quite a bit, haven't we?" Cal's eyes narrowed as he clenched his fists. "I will have what is rightfully mine," he growled before disappearing back into the shadows. The group exchanged worried glances. They knew Cal would be back, and they had to prepare for that eventuality. As the night wore on, they continued their exploration of the labyrinth, guided by the cryptic carvings and Zephyr's knowledge, searching for a way past Kull and closer to uncovering the truth about themselves and the world around them. As twilight descended upon the heart of the labyrinth, Mira stood silently in a quiet corner of the chamber, her eyes fixed on an open book resting atop another tome. The light flickered from a nearby torch, casting eerie shadows across the ancient carvings that adorned the room's walls. "I found something," she said quietly, breaking the silence. "This may be our key to understanding these cryptic symbols." The protagonist approached and leaned over her shoulder, peering at the book. The pages were filled with detailed illustrations of their world's creation, including intricate images of the labyrinth itself. His heart raced as he recognized familiar places within its grand design. "This could be it," he murmured in awe. Zephyr fluttered playfully around them, his laughter tinkling through the dimly lit chamber. "You never cease to amaze me, scribe." He darted towards Mira, causing her to jump slightly as he landed on her shoulder. "I thought you'd enjoy this discovery." Mira smiled at him, but her gaze lingered on the book. "We should study it more carefully," she said, her voice tinged with urgency. "Kel will be after us soon." A sense of unease washed over the group as they set up camp for the night. The labyrinth was a constant reminder of their perilous situation, its stone corridors whispering secrets only understood by the few who dared to enter. As the night wore on, whispers echoed through the darkness, hinting at hidden dangers lurking within the labyrinth's heart. The next morning they continued their journey deeper into the labyrinth, following a hunch based on the book's illustrations. The corridors grew narrower and darker, their walls adorned with symbols that seemed to dance in the flickering torchlight. They passed through a massive stone door, its carvings depicting scenes of creation and destruction. "This must be where the heart lies," Mira said, her voice barely audible. "We've come so far, but our journey is not over yet." As they ventured further into the labyrinth, the air grew colder, and the whispers grew louder. They could feel Cal's presence lurking nearby, waiting for an opportunity to strike. The group tensed, their hearts pounding in their chests as they moved cautiously through the dimly lit corridors. Finally, they arrived at a long hallway lined with bookshelves that led to a quiet corner of the chamber. Inside, they found a small table and several chairs, along with an open book on top. The chronicles of the unseen scribe lay before them, its pages brimming with knowledge about their world's creation. Mira approached the table, her eyes wide with anticipation. "We can learn so much here," she whispered, her hand trembling slightly as she reached out to touch the book. The protagonist stood behind her, a strange sense of unease creeping over him as he watched her. Zephyr fluttered around them excitedly. "This is it. We've found the chronicles." He darted towards Mira, landing on her shoulder and nuzzling against her ear. "I can feel its power here." As they began to study the book, Cal suddenly appeared in the doorway, his eyes cold and calculating. "So you've finally come this far," he said, his voice dripping with malice. "You shouldn't have come this deep into the labyrinth." The group tensed, ready for a confrontation. But as Cale stepped forward, Mira spoke up, her voice steady and determined. "We will not let you take what is rightfully ours," she said, her eyes locked onto his. Cale smiled slyly. "You think your little group can stand against me?" he taunted. "I have powers that you cannot even dream of." He reached out towards the chronicles, but just as he was about to touch it, a strange energy pulsed through the room. The protagonist's eyes widened in shock as he felt the power coursing through him. With a swift movement, he grabbed Cal's wrist and held the adversary back, his grip surprisingly strong. "You won't take what we've fought for," he said, his voice filled with newfound resolve. Mira looked on in surprise as Zephyr floated around them, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "You've done it," he cried out. "You've harnessed the power of the chronicles." Cal struggled against the protagonist's grip, but to no avail. He glared at Mira and Zephyr, his face twisted in anger. "This isn't over," he snarled before disappearing into shadows. The unseen scribe of Time's labyrinth, the group huddled around a warm fire within their temporary camp, their spirits low and weary from the day's events. Mira studied the time-bending tome, her eyes reflecting both curiosity and apprehension as she turned its pages. Zephyr danced among the flames, his laughter ringing out like distant bells. "We must be cautious," Mira warned. "The power we've discovered is great, but it comes with a cost." "What do you mean?" the protagonist questioned, leaning forward to catch Zephyr as he playfully darted closer. Mira hesitated, her gaze drifting towards Cal's direction. "I'm not sure," she admitted, "but I sense that our enemy seeks the time-bending tome too." The group exchanged worried glances. Zephyr's laughter grew more distant as he retreated to a quiet corner of the chamber, leaving them alone with their thoughts. "We must be prepared," Cal declared, materializing before them. "I want that artifact, and I won't let you stand in my way." The group tensed, the fire flickering as tension filled the air. Zephyr reappeared, a sly grin spreading across his face. He tossed a small object towards Cal, who caught it effortlessly. "A trinket for your troubles," Zephyr called out, his voice mocking. "And I think you'll find this of interest." Cal examined the item, another tome bound in tarnished gold, and his eyes widened with greed as he recognized its potential power. Mira stepped forward. "You've been a thorn in our side long enough," she said, her voice firm and cold. "But if you want this artifact, you must face me." The group prepared for the coming confrontation within their temporary camp, the labyrinth's heart pulsating around them with its ancient rhythm. The air was heavy with tension as they exchanged anxious glances and whispered words of encouragement. "Prepare yourselves," Mira said, her voice steady despite the palpable dread. "We stand on the precipice of a battle that will shape our future." Zephyr's laughter echoed off the stone walls. "Fear not, the labyrinth is with us, and I have no doubt we shall emerge victorious." The protagonist felt the weight of the chronicles of the unseen scribe in his hands, its power thrumming against his touch like a heartbeat. He could feel the secrets it held, secrets he must unravel to save their world. As night fell, the group ventured deeper into the labyrinth, guided by Zephyr's light and Mira's wisdom. Their path led them through long corridors lined with bookshelves that seemed to stretch on forever, each filled with ancient tomes bound in tarnished gold. The air was thick with history and mystery, a testament to the labyrinth's age-old existence. In one quiet corner of a chamber, they found another tome bound in tarnished gold, its cover open, revealing intricate carvings that hinted at untold knowledge. Zephyr approached it cautiously, his eyes wide with curiosity. The group watched as he gently traced the symbols etched into the cover, his fingers lingering over a particular set of markings. "This is incredible," he whispered, his voice filled with reverence. "It's a time-bending tome." Mira stepped forward, her eyes narrowing as she studied the artifact. "Be careful, Zephyr. This could be dangerous." Despite Mira's warning, Zephyr's excitement got the better of him, and he opened the book. The room seemed to tremble as a swirling vortex appeared before them, pulling at their very essence. The air grew cold, and the group felt a sudden urge to run to escape the time-bending power unleashed by the tome. But they held fast, knowing that this artifact could be the key to defeating Carl and saving their world. As the vortex stabilized, the protagonist stepped forward, his determination set. He reached out, his fingers brushing against the cover of the time-bending tome. As he touched it, a surge of energy coursed through him, and the vortex began to fade. The air warmed, and the room returned to its former state. The group exchanged hesitant looks, unsure of what had just transpired. "We must return to our camp," Mira said. "Kale will be growing impatient." The group made their way back to their temporary camp, each lost in their thoughts. The protagonist couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something great, something that would change the course of their journey forever. Little did they know, Kale was hot on their heels, ready to make his move. The unseen scribe of Time's labyrinth, the group's tent flapped wildly in the wind as thunder echoed through the labyrinth, ominous clouds looming outside. The protagonist sat by a flickering campfire, the time-bending tome before him. Mira sat close, eyes focused on the swirling vortex within the book. "What did you feel when you touched it?" she asked softly. He hesitated, his gaze drawn to the vortex's hypnotic dance. "A strange energy coursed through me, something familiar yet foreign." Mira's eyes narrowed, her fingers tracing intricate carvings on an adjacent tome. "I think it's connected to your past." The protagonist shivered as memories flashed before him like fleeting shadows. A young girl, tears streaming down her face, a stern figure, his mentor, admonishing him for his reckless actions. He pushed the thoughts away, focusing on their present situation. "We need to learn more about this artifact and Kel's intentions," he said firmly. "I won't let him take what is rightfully mine." Zephyr fluttered nearby, his laughter echoing in the still night. "Relax, friend. We have a powerful ally now. This book can help us turn the tide against Kull." Mira glared at Zephyr, her eyes filled with warning. "The time-bending tome is dangerous, and we must be cautious. The labyrinth itself is changing, and so are its guardians." As the wind howled outside, the group huddled together in their temporary camp, each lost in thought. Unbeknownst to them, Cal watched from a distance, his eyes gleaming with malice and desire. He licked his lips, plotting his next move. The following day, the group ventured deeper into the labyrinth, following cryptic clues left behind by the ancient builders. The walls seemed to whisper secrets as they passed through stone corridors, their footsteps echoing off distant chambers. In one hallway lined with bookshelves, a quiet corner caught Mira's attention. "Look at this," she murmured, her fingers tracing over faded texts. "Ancient inscriptions, and these symbols are familiar." The protagonist squinted at the parchment, his heart racing as recognition dawned upon him. "These are the same symbols from my memories, the ones that led me here." Zephyr flitted around them excitedly. "I knew it. This is our chance to unravel the labyrinth's secrets and learn about its creators." Mira cautioned, "Be careful. These clues are ancient and powerful. We must proceed with caution." As they delved deeper into the heart of the labyrinth, the group discovered another massive stone door, the same one from their first meeting with Cal. A sense of unease washed over them as they approached it, knowing that their adversary was likely watching their every move. Mira pressed her ear against the door, listening closely. "I can't make out anything, but I feel a presence on the other side." The protagonist clenched his jaw, determination burning within him. We have to find a way in before Cal does. Zephyr fluttered around them, examining the door. I see some faint carvings here. Perhaps there's a hidden mechanism? Together, they worked to decipher the cryptic symbols on the stone. As the hours passed and their progress seemed slow, tension mounted between the group members. Mira grew increasingly agitated, her eyes never straying from the door. Finally, with a triumphant cry, Zephyr found the secret lever hidden within the carvings. The massive door swung open to reveal another long hallway lined with bookshelves and a quiet corner. As they stepped into the room, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. In the corner sat an ancient tome bound in tarnished gold, the Chronicles of the Unseen Scribe. The protagonist approached it cautiously, his heart pounding. He reached out, touching the cover reverently. A wave of memories washed over him, revealing fragments of his forgotten past. Mira watched from afar, her eyes narrowed in suspicion. I've seen these symbols before. They belong to a powerful order, one that sought to control time itself. Zephyr's laughter echoed through the room. Aha! So this is where your past comes into play. The protagonist looked up, meeting Mira's gaze. My past. What do you mean? Mira hesitated, her eyes filled with conflict. I have secrets of my own, secrets that may help explain your connection to these symbols. As the wind howled and rain poured down outside the temporary camp, Mira sat by the fire, her eyes scanning the ancient tome bound in tarnished gold that rested on a wooden stand. The protagonist looked over at Zephyr, who was examining another open book lying nearby. Kel lurked in the shadows, observing them with cold intent. I've found something, said Mira, breaking the silence. These symbols you've been seeing, they match the ones in this book. Zephyr perked up, his eyes shining brightly. You mean the Chronicles of the Unseen Scribe? The protagonist stared at the ancient tome, feeling a strange connection to it. He remembered moments from his past life, memories he'd forgotten but now seemed familiar again. Mira continued, these symbols are part of an ancient order, one that sought to control time itself. And you think I could be connected to them? The protagonist asked. Mira nodded, her eyes filled with a mix of curiosity and caution. It's possible, but there's more to it than that. This order was feared by many. They were said to have been vanquished long ago. But why would Kel be interested in me? Questioned the protagonist. Because you are a time-bound scribe, answered Mira, her voice barely above a whisper. And if he can control your abilities, he could manipulate time itself. A sudden gust of wind blew through the tent, causing the flames to dance wildly. The protagonist felt a shiver run down his spine as Kel stepped out from the shadows. I see you found something interesting, sneered Kel, his eyes gleaming with malice. But I have something even more valuable. He reached into his robes and produced another tome bound in tarnished gold, causing the group to tense up. That tome is rumored to grant its wielder immense power, the ability to bend time. Kel continued, a sly smile spreading across his face. I'll give it to you for a price. Mira stepped in front of the protagonist protectively, her eyes locked onto Kel. The Chronicles of the Unseen Scribe are not for sale, she snapped, her voice dripping with venom. Kel laughed coldly. That's where you're wrong. If I don't get what I want, I'll take it by force. With that, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the stormy night. The group sat in silence for a moment before Zephyr spoke up, his voice quivering slightly. What does he mean about bending time? The unseen scribe of time's labyrinth, the protagonist stirred from restless sleep, feeling a strange energy in the air. Zephyr danced around him playfully, its laughter like wind chimes in the stillness. Morning, said Mira, her eyes fixed on the glowing embers of the fire. I've had a strange dream, confessed the protagonist. It felt real. Zephyr giggled. An echo from your past, perhaps. But it was more than that. It felt like I knew what would happen next, he said, his voice trembling slightly. Mira raised an eyebrow. We should take this seriously. Your dreams could hold the key to our survival. As the group broke camp, they ventured deeper into the labyrinth. The stone corridors seemed to hum under their feet as they walked. Intricate carvings adorned every wall, and the air grew colder. "What do you think this place is?" asked Zephyr, peering at one particularly detailed carving of a man with an open book. "I believe it represents the world's creation," said Mira. "This labyrinth was built as a testament to the power and knowledge required to shape our realm." The protagonist felt a sudden pang of recognition at the sight of the carving, but he pushed the feeling away. They continued down the hallway, passing another massive stone door, until they reached a quiet corner of the chamber. The air was heavy with anticipation. Mira knelt before the bookshelf-lined room and ran her fingers over ancient tomes bound in tarnished gold. "These are the records of those who have shaped our world," she murmured. "But it seems we're looking for something specific." "The Chronicles of the Unseen Scribe?" asked Zephyr. Mira nodded, her eyes scanning the room. "They must be hidden. We need to find a clue." As they searched the chamber, Kale appeared in the shadows, his figure eerily familiar yet twisted and distorted. The protagonist's heart raced as he stepped forward, trying to hide behind Mira. "You can't keep running," said Kale, stepping into the light. "I will find what I seek, with or without you." "What do you want?" demanded Mira, her voice shaking slightly. "The Chronicles of the Unseen Scribe," he replied. "With it, I can bend time to my will." The protagonist felt a strange warmth in his chest as Cal's words echoed memories from his past life. "I might be able to help you find what you seek, if you tell me about your connection to the Unseen Scribe." Cal hesitated, then extended his hand towards the protagonist, revealing another tarnished gold-bound tome in his grasp. "The time-bending tome," he said. "It grants immense power over time, but I need your help to unlock its secrets." The group moved cautiously through the dimly lit stone corridors of the labyrinth, seeking clues and answers about its creation. Zephyr's laughter echoed off the walls as he darted ahead, his ethereal form blending with the shadows. Mira's eyes gleamed with an unreadable emotion as she scanned the ancient inscriptions etched into the stone. Suddenly, a faint hum resonated through the air, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. The group exchanged uneasy glances, sensing another presence nearby. A few moments later, Cal emerged from a hidden alcove, his icy gaze locked onto the protagonist. "Your journey has been interesting," he said, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "I've been watching you." Mira stepped forward protectively, her eyes flashing with defiance. "You will not take what is rightfully ours," she warned, gripping the ancient tome bound in tarnished gold tightly. Kale chuckled darkly. "I'm offering you something far greater than that dusty relic," he said, revealing another tome bound in tarnished gold, the time-bending tome. "Give me what I want, and I'll give you the power to change your fate." The protagonist hesitated, torn between trusting his newfound friends or taking the opportunity to gain control over their situation. He glanced at Mira, who shook her head slightly, a silent plea for him not to entertain Cal's offer. Zephyr hovered nearby, watching the tense exchange with wide eyes. As the group prepared to defend themselves against Cal, they found themselves ambushed by a wave of shadows that emerged from the walls, trapping them in a small chamber. Mira and Zephyr fought valiantly alongside the protagonist, their combined efforts barely keeping up with Cal's onslaught. In the heat of battle, the time-bending tome fell to the ground, its cover shattered by a stray blow from Cal. The hum in the air grew stronger, and a sudden rush of energy surged through the room as the tome activated. The stone walls began to crack and crumble around them, threatening to bury the group alive. Mira's eyes widened, and she quickly seized the now active time-bending tome. With a determined look, she closed her eyes and focused, trying to harness its immense power. As the walls continued to close in on them, the protagonist felt an unexpected surge of hope. If Mira could control Kale's manipulation of time, they might just survive this encounter. The battle raged on, as the group fought tooth and nail to escape the crumbling chamber. The air around them crackled with energy, and the once stable stone walls threatened to collapse at any moment. As the dust settled, Mira emerged victorious, her grasp on the time-bending tome steady. Cal glared at her defiantly before disappearing into a swirl of shadows, leaving behind a trail of broken carvings and shattered stone. The group looked around in shock, their hearts pounding in their chests as they realized they had barely escaped with their lives. The unseen scribe of Time's labyrinth, a dim light flickered in the heart of the labyrinth as Mira knelt before an ancient tome bound in tarnished gold, her fingers tracing its intricate carvings. The air crackled with power. Zephyr flitted around them, his laughter echoing through the stone corridors. "We have what we need," she murmured, sensing the weight of the knowledge held within those pages. "But Kel will never let us leave this place without a fight." The protagonist approached with a frown, studying the massive stone door that blocked their way further into the labyrinth's heart. "He'll find us here," he warned, gripping the dagger at his side tighter. "We must be ready for him," Mira said, her voice filled with determination. She opened the ancient tome and began reading aloud from its weathered pages. As she spoke, the air seemed to shimmer around them. The walls of the long hallway lined with bookshelves stretched out, growing darker and more foreboding. A quiet corner of the chamber came into view, a hidden alcove that housed another tome bound in tarnished gold. "I believe this may be what Kel seeks," Mira said, her eyes never leaving the open book on top. "He knows we have found something here and will stop at nothing to take it." The group cautiously moved towards the alcove, Zephyr leading the way. The walls closed in around them as they entered the small chamber, revealing a second time-bending tome. It shimmered with power, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. "We cannot let this fall into Kel's hands," Zephyr whispered excitedly. With both tomes he could bend time to his will. The protagonist nodded grimly, reaching for the time-bending tome with one hand while keeping an eye on the entrance. "We must be careful. We don't know what else Kel has planned. He won't find us here," Mira said, her eyes never leaving the tome in their grasp. "Not if we can help it." They retreated to a temporary camp set up nearby, huddling by the fire as night fell over the labyrinth. The air was heavy with tension as they discussed their next move. "We need a plan," the protagonist said, gazing into the flames. "If Kel comes for us here, we won't have an easy escape." Zephyr flitted around them, his laughter fading into whispers of ancient knowledge. "I can show you another way through the labyrinth," he offered. "A secret path that leads to its heart." Mira looked up from the chronicles of the unseen scribe, her eyes shining with hope. "We may have a chance then," she said softly. The next morning, they set off once more into the labyrinth, following Zephyr's guidance through stone corridors and hidden alcoves. They came upon another massive stone door, its carvings depicting scenes of destruction and chaos. A quiet corner of a chamber lay beyond it, a bookshelf-lined room that housed a third tome bound in tarnished gold. "This is our destination," Zephyr announced, flitting around the massive stone door. The heart of the labyrinth. As they entered the room, they found themselves surrounded by ancient records and carvings depicting the world's creation. The air was charged with power, pulsating rhythmically like a heartbeat. In the corner of the chamber, another open book sat atop a pedestal, the time-bending tome. Mira approached cautiously, her eyes never leaving the artifact. "This is our key to stopping Kel," she said, reaching out to touch it. But as soon as Mira took hold of the time-bending tome, the walls began to crumble around them. Shadows poured into the chamber from every direction, coalescing into a wave that threatened to engulf them all. "Run," the protagonist shouted, pushing Mira behind him as they retreated towards the entrance. The shadows closed in, their icy tendrils snaking around their feet. In the chaos, Zephyr disappeared, leaving them alone against the tide of darkness. They fought back with all their might, using every weapon they had to hold off the encroaching shadows. As the battle raged on, Mira struggled to control the power of the active time-bending tome. The air crackled around her, the very fabric of reality seeming to bend and warp as she fought to bring it under her command. Finally, with a mighty effort, she managed to push back the shadows and regain control over the time-bending tome. Kel's presence was gone, leaving behind destruction in his wake. The group emerged from the crumbling chamber, battered but alive. "We have what we need," Mira said, clutching the time-bending tome tightly. "But this is far from over." The protagonist nodded grimly. "We'll find Kel and stop him once and for all. he promised, determination burning in his eyes. Mira looked at him with a mixture of admiration and concern. "You have grown stronger than I ever imagined," she said softly. "I am proud to stand beside you." Together they set out once more into the labyrinth, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The path before them was uncertain, but they knew that together they could overcome any obstacle. They just needed to be careful Cal would not give up easily. As they journeyed deeper into the labyrinth, the air grew colder and darker. Shadows lurked around every corner, ready to attack at a moment's notice. But the group pressed on, driven by their determination to reclaim the chronicles of the unseen scribe and save the world from Kael's machinations. Their journey was long and fraught with danger, but they knew that they had what it took to see it through the power of the time-bending tome and their unwavering resolve. And though Kull remained ever watchful in the background, they would not let him stand in their way any longer. Inside a quiet corner of another chamber within the labyrinth's heart, Mira stood before the massive stone door, her expression grave. The ancient inscriptions etched upon its surface were a mystery to them all, but it was clear that this obstacle could not be passed without careful consideration. "Mira," said Zephyr, his voice laced with concern. "What do these symbols mean?" The mysterious librarian examined the intricate carvings, her mind racing as she deciphered their meaning. After a moment of silence, she spoke. "It seems this door can only open when both time-bending tomes are united," Mira explained, her gaze moving between the ancient symbols and the two books held tightly in her hands. "But I fear there will be consequences if we proceed." Kael's laughter echoed through the corridor as he materialized behind them, his malicious smile betraying his intentions. "You worry too much, Mira," he taunted. "The world is not yet ready for such knowledge. But with this power at my disposal, I can reshape reality to suit my desires. And what if you're wrong?" asked the protagonist, stepping forward to confront Kael. "What if your manipulations lead to unintended consequences beyond even your control?" Kael scoffed. "I have already accounted for that," he replied, his eyes flickering with an otherworldly light. "The world must bend to my will." "Enough," Mira snapped, her grip tightening on the time-bending tomes. "You are not worthy of such power. You seek to control everything, but have you ever considered the cost? The world's balance is fragile, and your reckless actions could shatter it." "Silence," Cal bellowed, his anger growing. "I will take what is rightfully mine, and nothing shall stand in my way." The air crackled with tension as the two adversaries faced off, their eyes locked in a battle of wits and wills. Zephyr looked between them nervously, knowing that this confrontation could determine the fate of not just themselves, but the entire world. "We cannot allow him to gain control," the protagonist said resolutely. "Mira, we must open the door and confront Kael within." With a deep breath, Mira nodded her agreement. Gathering her resolve, she began to recite an incantation as the stones of the massive door shifted slightly under their feet. The air around them filled with energy as the ancient symbols glowed brightly, finally giving way to a soft whisper. "It is done." N. The unseen scribe of time's labyrinth inside the heart of the labyrinth, the stone walls echoed with ancient inscriptions as the group advanced cautiously down a long hallway lined with bookshelves. The air was thick with anticipation and fear. Zephyr flitted about them playfully, but his mischievous glint betrayed a hint of worry. The massive stone door loomed ahead, its intricate carvings depicting scenes from their world's creation. As the group reached it, Mira cautioned that Kael would not be far behind. The protagonist grit his teeth, feeling both resolve and dread. He had come so far, and yet there was still so much to lose. "We must move quickly," Mira whispered urgently. "The consequences of opening that door may be more than we can bear." She glanced at the time-bending tomes clutched tightly in their hands, her eyes filled with determination. The protagonist nodded silently and stepped closer to the door, placing one tome into its carved slot on either side. The stones began to glow softly as the door creaked open, revealing a quiet corner of another chamber within the labyrinth's heart. Inside, they found Kael waiting for them, a wicked grin spreading across his face as he held out another tome bound in tarnished gold. "I knew you'd come," he sneered, "but you should have expected this." The group tensed, ready for battle. They had come too far to let Kell take what was rightfully theirs. As they prepared to fight, the air around them crackled with energy, the very fabric of time shifting and warping in response to the time-bending tomes. Kell's eyes glinted dangerously as he raised his newfound artifact high above his head. "You can run," he taunted, "but you cannot hide from me." He lunged at them, the air around him distorting and swirling with shadows. The protagonist gripped his dagger tightly, feeling a surge of power coursing through him as memories flooded back, memories of battles long ago, of friendships forged and lost, of love and pain and betrayal. He knew what he had to do. With a fierce cry, he charged at Kell, determined to protect his friends and reclaim their world's future. The battle raged on, each blow striking sparks that danced through the air like fireflies in the night. Mira and Zephy fought fiercely by the protagonist's side, their combined strength a beacon of hope amidst the chaos. But Kell was a formidable adversary, his mastery over time making him unpredictable and deadly. In the midst of the fray, Mira and Kell found themselves face to face, their eyes locked in a battle as ancient as the world itself. As they fought, old wounds were reopened, secrets shared that shook the very foundations of their reality. It was then that the protagonist realized something terrifying. The air in the labyrinth crackled with energy as they approached another massive stone door. The group huddled together, sharing determined glances. Mira studied the intricate carvings on the door, her eyes narrowing. "This is a gateway to another part of our world's creation," she murmured, tracing the symbols etched into the stone with her fingers. "It seems we must pass through it if we are to find what lies at the heart of this labyrinth." Zephy fluttered excitedly, his laughter tinkling like wind chimes. "I've heard tales of hidden chambers and ancient tombs beyond these doors," he said, eyes wide with excitement. "Perhaps we will find answers to our questions there." The protagonist looked at them both, steeling himself for the challenge ahead. The labyrinth was becoming more treacherous as they ventured deeper. He could feel it. Kell's presence lingered like a shadow at the edge of his vision, waiting for an opportunity to strike. He clenched the dagger in his hand, focusing on the mission before them. As they moved forward, the stone corridors twisted and turned, leading them into a long hallway lined with bookshelves. The scent of ancient parchment filled their nostrils as they passed, sending a shiver down the protagonist's spine. He paused at one open book on top of a shelf, catching a glimpse of familiar letters that sent his heart racing. "Mira," he called out, pointing to the book. "Do you recognize this script?" She moved closer to examine it, her eyes scanning the pages before she looked up, meeting his gaze. "I believe so," she said slowly. "It's an ancient language, one used by the scribes of old." Zephyr fluttered around them as they continued down the hallway, a sense of urgency growing in the air. The protagonist could feel it too. Kell was getting closer. He knew they needed to find what lay at the heart of this labyrinth before it was too late. They arrived at a quiet corner of the chamber, where another massive stone door awaited them. Mira traced the symbols on its surface, her lips moving silently as she muttered incantations under her breath. As the door began to creak open, a wave of shadows surged towards them from behind. Kell and his minions had arrived. The group sprang into action, defending themselves against the attackers as Mira fought to keep the stone door closed. The protagonist could feel Kell's presence growing stronger as he reached out with his powers, trying to break through. He knew they had to move quickly, time was running out. As the battle raged on, Zephyr fluttered around them, aiding in their defense and deciphering the cryptic clues within the labyrinth. Together, they held off Kell's minions, but he kept pressing forward, determined to take what was rightfully his. The Chronicles of the Unseen Scribe. In the midst of the fight, Mira and Kell faced off, their blades clashing as ancient secrets were shared between them. The protagonist watched, stunned, as memories flooded back, memories of a time before the labyrinth, when they had fought together against a common enemy. He could feel the weight of those old battles bearing down on him, reminding him of all he stood to lose if Kale succeeded in his quest for power. With renewed determination, the protagonist charged at Kale, sword raised high. Mira joined the fight, her movements graceful and precise as she fought alongside him. Together they managed to push Kale back, but he was far from defeated. His mastery over time made him unpredictable and deadly, a constant threat that lingered even as the group retreated through the stone door into another chamber within the labyrinth's heart. As they caught their breath, Mira looked at the protagonist, her eyes filled with concern. "We need to be careful," she warned him softly. "Kale will not stop until he has what he wants." The protagonist nodded, clutching the dagger tightly as he scanned their surroundings. They were deeper in the labyrinth than ever before and closer to the truth than they had ever been. But Kale's pursuit was relentless, and every moment brought new danger. He knew that if they were to survive, they would have to tread carefully and rely on each other more than ever before. As they made camp in a small chamber, the group huddled together, sharing stories and memories to pass the time. The air was heavy with tension, but there was also a sense of camaraderie that buoyed their spirits. Zephyr fluttered around them, his laughter echoing through the stone corridors as they prepared for another day within the labyrinth's heart. The unseen scribe of Time's labyrinth, the protagonist stood at the edge of a long hallway lined with bookshelves, his eyes tracing the spines of ancient texts as Mira and Zephyr conversed in hushed tones nearby. The weight of the labyrinth pressed down on him like a heavy cloak, but he felt invigorated by their progress. "Zephyr, have you seen anything strange or out of place recently?" Mira asked, her voice barely audible. "Something feels off." The sprite squinted, considering the question before answering. "There's been a strange energy emanating from Kale ever since he arrived at our camp. It's unlike anything I've felt before." Mira's eyes narrowed. "I thought as much," she replied, her gaze shifting to the protagonist. "We must be careful, my friend. Kale is not one to be trifled with." "But why pursue us so relentlessly?" the protagonist asked, turning to face them. "What does he want from us?" Mira's expression turned grave. "The time-bending tome, among other things," she murmured. "Kale knows its power and believes it can give him control over time itself. We must protect it at all costs." "And the chronicles of the unseen scribe," Zephyr piped up. "He wants those too." The protagonist felt a shiver run down his spine. He had glimpsed Kale's true intentions in their last encounter, to use the power of the chronicles and the time-bending tome to reshape reality, giving him dominion over their world. He could not allow that to happen. As they continued discussing strategy, a sudden noise echoed through the labyrinth, footsteps approaching rapidly in the distance. Mira's eyes widened, and she quickly motioned for them to hide. The group ducked behind the bookshelves as Kale and his minions appeared around the corner, scanning the hallway with practiced efficiency. Mira's gaze never left Kale as he approached the quiet corner of the chamber where they hid. With a sly smile, she reached out to touch one of the books on the shelf, but not before the protagonist caught her hand. "Yet," he whispered urgently. "Let's wait for a better opportunity." Kale's minions began searching the shelves, their eyes glinting with greed as they looked for hidden treasures. Zephyr peeked out from his hiding place, watching carefully, but Kale remained focused on Mira. The tension in the air grew palpable, and the protagonist could feel the danger mounting. Just then, a wave of shadows erupted from one of the bookshelves, engulfing Kale and his minions. They cried out in surprise as the darkness enveloped them, disappearing into the depths of the labyrinth. Mira breathed a sigh of relief, but the protagonist knew that this was far from over. As they made their way deeper into the labyrinth, the group discussed what they had learned about Kale and his true intentions. They were running out of time to stop him, not just for themselves, but for the world itself. The stakes were higher than ever before, and the consequences of failure were unimaginable, but the protagonist was determined to see this through. He had come too far to turn back now. And with Mira, Zephyr, and their newfound knowledge about Kale's weaknesses, they might just stand a chance against the enigmatic adversary, who sought to manipulate time for his own gain. The group entered a long hallway lined with bookshelves. each filled with ancient texts and scrolls. The air was thick with anticipation as they searched for the hidden alcove containing the time-bending tomes. Zephyr darted ahead, playfully taunting Kale's minions that lurked behind them. "Ha! You won't catch us so easily," he cried out, his voice echoing through the stone corridors. The mischievous sprite zigzagged through the shelves, evading the shadow's grasp. The group followed suit, their hearts pounding in rhythm with the rapid footsteps of Kale's minions. Suddenly, a massive stone door appeared before them, its intricate carvings depicting scenes from the Chronicles of the Unseen Scribe. Mira paused, her eyes narrowing as she examined the symbols carefully. "This is it," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "The heart of our labyrinthine home." Zephyr bounded to the door and tested its seal with a swift kick. It cracked open, revealing a quiet corner of another chamber within the labyrinth's heart. The group entered cautiously, their eyes adjusting to the dim light filtering through stained glass windows above. The chamber was filled with bookshelves that stretched up and up, towering into darkness. In the center stood an open book on top of a pedestal, its pages yellowed from age. The Chronicles of the Unseen Scribe lay before them, their secrets waiting to be unlocked. Mira stepped forward, her hand outstretched towards the ancient tome bound in tarnished gold. But as she reached for it, a wave of shadows erupted from the stone corridors behind them. Kale stood at their helm, his eyes gleaming with malevolent delight as he extended an arm, holding another time-bending tome. "Surrender the Chronicles and the time-bending tomes," he demanded, his voice echoing ominously through the chamber. "Or I shall take what is rightfully mine." The group exchanged nervous glances, their hearts sinking at Kale's bold assertion. But as they prepared to defend themselves, a sudden gust of wind whipped through the chamber, extinguishing the shadows and pushing Kale back against the wall. "Do not underestimate us," Mira warned, her voice stern yet filled with determination. "We will protect the Chronicles and the time-bending tomes at all costs." Kale's eyes narrowed, his face contorted in anger. "You cannot stop me forever," he growled, disappearing into the shadows once more. The group knew they could not afford to rest. Kale would return, and they needed to be ready. They took their positions, readying themselves for another confrontation with the enigmatic adversary who sought to control time itself. The fate of the world hung in the balance, and they had no choice but to fight for survival. As the group prepared for battle, Zephyr whispered to the protagonist, "Remember, we have the power within us to bend time. Use it wisely." The unseen scribe of time's labyrinth, the group huddled around the warm campfire, their eyes scanning the shadows surrounding their temporary home within the labyrinth's heart. Mira's gaze was distant, lost in thought, while Zephyr twirled leaves playfully above the fire. The protagonist studied the time-bending tomes before him, his fingers tracing over ancient inscriptions. "We've come so far," said Mira softly, breaking the silence. "But we're not yet safe." She looked at the books on the table before them, her eyes lingering on one in particular, the Chronicles of the Unseen Scribe. Zephyr chittered, drawing their attention to a flicker of movement beyond the camp. A shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, its form vaguely humanoid yet distorted and sinister. Mira's eyes widened as she recognized it. "Cal," growled the protagonist, rising to his feet, clutching one of the tomes in his hand. "What do you want?" Cal smirked, a cruel glint in his eye. "I've come for your toys," he said, gesturing at the books, "and I won't leave empty-handed." Mira stepped between them, her eyes never leaving Cal. "You can't take what isn't yours." Her voice was cold and hard as she glared at him. Cal took a step closer, his shadows swirling around him like a dark storm. "I have my ways," he said, reaching for one of the tomes. But before he could grasp it, the protagonist struck out with the book, sending Kale stumbling backwards into the darkness. The group rushed forward, weapons at the ready as Kale's shadows coalesced around him, forming a protective barrier. Zephyr zipped between them, his laughter ringing through the air as he dodged their attacks. "Enough," shouted Mira, her voice echoing through the chamber. A sudden gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing Kale's shadows and leaving him vulnerable. The protagonist lunged at Kel, who retreated towards another massive stone door. "I'll be back for those books," he shouted, disappearing into the darkness beyond. Mira stared after him, her eyes narrowed in determination. "We can't let him win," she said grimly. He must not get his hands on those tomes. Zephyr fluttered around them, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "But what if we have another way?" he asked, leading the group towards the heart of the labyrinth and an ancient chamber filled with bookshelves. As they ventured deeper into the labyrinth, their hearts heavy with worry, the protagonist couldn't shake the feeling that Carl's return would be imminent. They just had to find a way to stop him before it was too late. The group entered another small chamber, finding themselves in front of a hidden alcove. Within lay an ancient tome bound in tarnished gold, the time-bending tome. Zephyr's eyes sparkled with excitement as he approached the book. "This could change everything," he said, running his fingers over the intricate carvings adorning its cover. Mira watched him warily. "We must be careful," she warned. "These tomes are dangerous." The protagonist nodded, taking a deep breath before reaching out to touch the book. A jolt of energy surged through his fingertips as the tome recognized him as its master. He closed his eyes, focusing on the feeling of power coursing through him. When he opened them again, Mira and Zephyr were gaping at him in awe. "You can bend time," whispered Zephyr, his voice barely above a whisper. "But be careful. With such power comes great responsibility." As the group huddled around their campfire within the labyrinth's heart, Mira examined the ancient tome bound in tarnished gold that lay before her. The chronicles of the unseen scribe lay closed and silent, its power locked away for millennia. Zephyr danced playfully near the fire, casting flickering shadows upon their faces as they discussed their next move. "It seems we have an unwelcome visitor," Mira said, her eyes never leaving the tome. The group turned to see Carl standing in the stone corridor leading to their camp. He wore a sinister smile that sent a chill down their spines. "I thought I would find you here. We were not expecting your arrival so soon," the protagonist replied cautiously, glancing at Zephyr for reassurance. The mischievous sprite nodded subtly in response. Kel strode forward, his eyes never leaving Mira. "I have come to offer you something of great value." He reached into his robes and produced another tome bound in tarnished gold. "This is the time-bending tome that I mentioned earlier. It will give you immense power over time, rivaling even the one you possess now." Mira stood up, her eyes narrowed. "I do not need your gifts or threats, Cal. This tome stays with us." Cal's expression turned dark. "It is mine by right. I will take it from you if I must." With a snap of his fingers, he summoned several shadows that formed into menacing figures. They advanced upon the group, their eyes glowing red. A wind rushed through the camp, extinguishing the shadows and scattering them to the four winds. Mira's command over the air was formidable, but Kale was not deterred. He quickly reformed his shadows and attacked the group with renewed vigor. Zephyr darted between the combatants, using his agility to dodge the attacks and create openings for the protagonist to strike back at their adversary. The battle raged on, each side trading blows as they struggled to gain the upper hand. Finally, Mira managed to get behind Kale and drive him back with a fierce gust of wind. The enigmatic figure retreated, vowing to return for the time-bending tomes. As he vanished into the shadows, the group breathed a sigh of relief. They had survived another encounter with their adversary, but they knew that their time together in the labyrinth was running short. "We cannot stay here much longer," Mira said as they tended to their wounds. "Kale will return for the tomes and we must be prepared." The protagonist nodded. "We will rest now, but tomorrow we move on. We cannot allow him to take what is rightfully ours." The unseen scribe of time's labyrinth, as the sun's last rays dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the stone corridors within the labyrinth, Mira led her small group deeper into its heart. The air grew colder, and the walls echoed with whispers of ancient wisdom that seemed to beckon them further. "The next chamber is where we'll find our answer," Mira said softly, her voice barely audible above the wind howling through the stone passageways. "I can feel it." Zephyr darted ahead, his mischievous laughter filling the air as he flitted from bookshelf to bookshelf, deciphering cryptic inscriptions. Mira followed closely, her gaze focused on the floor beneath her feet for hidden traps or clues. The protagonist, ever vigilant, kept watch over their backs, scanning the shadows for any sign of Cal's presence. Their journey had taken them through endless stone corridors and chambers filled with ancient tomes bound in tarnished gold. They'd faced ambushes by waves of shadows that seemed to materialize out of thin air, and they'd even encountered other travelers lost within the labyrinth. But nothing prepared them for what lay ahead. A massive stone door loomed before them, ornately carved with intricate symbols that seemed to dance and shift as they approached. Mira stepped forward, her fingers tracing the symbols as if in a trance. "This is it," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "We've come so far." With a collective breath, they pushed against the door. It swung open slowly, revealing another long hallway lined with bookshelves and leading to a quiet corner of the chamber. The air inside was heavy with anticipation as the group stepped through the threshold. Mira and Zephyr exchanged knowing glances as they took in their surroundings. The protagonist followed closely behind them, his heart racing as he noticed something different about this chamber. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but it felt significant. "We should be careful," Mira said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This is where I discovered the first time-bending tome." If Cal was smart, he would have found this place already. As they cautiously moved through the chamber, Zephyr suddenly let out a shrill laugh and darted towards an open book on top of a nearby bookshelf. "I found something," he cried out, his wings fluttering excitedly. The group gathered around him as he carefully lifted the tome from the shelf. It was bound in tarnished gold and covered in ancient inscriptions that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly energy. Mira's eyes widened as she took it into her hands, her fingers tracing the symbols once more. This is incredible," she breathed, her voice filled with awe. "This is the Chronicles of the Unseen Scribe." The protagonist stepped forward, his heart racing with anticipation and fear as he took the book from Mira's hands. He felt an inexplicable connection to it, as if the words within held secrets that could change everything. But as he opened the cover, a strange sensation washed over him. The room seemed to tremble around them, and the symbols on the walls began to dance more wildly than before. "What's happening?" Zephyr cried out, his eyes wide with fear. Mira's gaze flicked towards the protagonist, her brow furrowing as she took in the scene. "I don't know," she said softly, her voice heavy with worry, "but we need to leave now." As they hurriedly gathered their things and prepared to depart, the shadows seemed to close in around them. A sudden wave of cold swept through the chamber, and a voice echoed throughout the labyrinth. "You cannot hide from me forever." Cal's voice boomed, his presence palpable even as he remained unseen. "Give me the Chronicles of the Unseen Scribe, and I will spare you." Mira's eyes flashed with anger as she clutched the book to her chest protectively. "Never," she cried out, her voice filled with defiance. A cackle echoed throughout the chamber, and shadows swirled around them once more. Mira raised a hand, and a gust of wind swept through the room, driving back the darkness. Kel's laughter continued to fill the air as he retreated, promising to return for the Chronicles and the time-bending tomes. The group hurriedly left the chamber, knowing they needed to find a safe place to rest before continuing their journey. As they made their way back through the labyrinth, the shadows seemed to grow darker, and the whispers of ancient wisdom grew louder. They had found what they came for, but at what cost? As they reached their temporary camp, Mira's gaze remained fixed on the Chronicles as she held it protectively in her lap. "We cannot let Cal get his hands on these," she said softly, her voice heavy with determination. "We must destroy them if we have to." As the sun's last rays of light faded behind the horizon, the group found refuge in a hidden alcove within another chamber deep within the labyrinth's heart. Mira's face was etched with worry as she studied the stone carvings on the wall, tracing her fingers over ancient symbols that seemed to dance beneath them. "I think I've found something," she whispered, a glint of hope in her eyes. "The markings here are familiar." There's a pattern one that might lead us closer to the time-bending tome. Zephyr flitted around the room, examining the symbols with keen interest. I sense energy here, but it's faint. We need to find the exact combination if we want to unlock the full power of these carvings. The protagonist looked at Mira, his eyes reflecting determination. We can do this. With Cal getting closer every day, there's no time left for hesitation. I won't let him win. Mira nodded firmly, her resolve unwavering. I know you feel that way, but we must be cautious. This journey has already taken so much from us, we can't afford to make mistakes. Just then, the ground beneath them began to rumble. A wave of shadows erupted from a hidden door at the far end of the chamber. Mira and Zephyr quickly grabbed their weapons, prepared for battle. The protagonist stood tall, his fists clenched as he faced the approaching threat. "We have no choice but to fight," he said, his voice echoing through the stone corridors. "Together, we'll stand against Carl and protect our world." The group battled fiercely, their skills tested by the relentless onslaught of shadows. Mira called upon her arcane powers, casting spells that sent waves of energy rippling through the room. Zephyr darted between the shadows, slashing at unseen foes with his dagger. The protagonist fought with a newfound vigor, determined to protect those who had become like family to him. As the battle raged on, another massive stone door crashed open, revealing Cal standing amidst a cloud of darkness. His eyes gleamed with malice as he gazed upon the group. "Surrender now," he commanded, his voice echoing through the chamber. "The time-bending tomes are mine." Mira glared at him, her voice cold and hard. "Not while I live. You will never take what is rightfully ours." Cal sneered, reaching into his robe. A shimmering tome appeared in his hand, the time-bending tome he had been seeking. With a wave of his arm, he unleashed a torrent of shadows towards the group. Mira and Zephyr fought valiantly, but were quickly overpowered. The protagonist stood alone, facing Cal and his minions. He felt a surge of anger and fear course through him, but also a spark of something else, a memory long forgotten. He closed his eyes, summoning the power within him that he had never truly understood. As the shadows closed in, a brilliant light erupted from him, pushing back Cal's minions. "You underestimated me," the protagonist said, his voice filled with newfound confidence. "I am not just a scribe, I am the key to saving or dooming this world." Cal's eyes widened in shock as he realized the truth. "No, it cannot be," he cried, lunging at the protagonist with renewed fury. The battle between the two rivals raged on, their powers clashing in an explosion of light and darkness. Mira and Zephyr fought valiantly to hold off Cal's minions, but they were quickly overwhelmed. With a final surge of strength, the protagonist unleashed his full power, sending Cal tumbling backwards. As the dust settled, the protagonist stood over Cal, who lay unconscious on the ground. Mira and Zephyr struggled to their feet, exhausted but alive. "We did it," the protagonist said, his voice filled with relief. "We've survived another day." Mira smiled weakly, her eyes shining with pride. "We have indeed. But we cannot rest easy yet. Cal will return, stronger than before." The group shared a grim nod, knowing the truth of her words. They gathered their belongings and continued deeper into the labyrinth, determined to uncover more secrets about their world's creation. As they journeyed onward, they knew that the battle was far from over, but they would face it together, united in their quest for the truth. The unseen scribe of time's labyrinth, with a weary heart but newfound determination, the protagonist gazed upon the defeated Cal, whose form shimmered unnaturally as he lay unconscious at their feet. Mira knelt next to him, her eyes filled with fear and concern for their enemy's well-being. Zephyr floated nearby, watching with curiosity. "Mira," the protagonist began, "what is this power I used? Why did it seem familiar?" Mira hesitated, her gaze lingering on Cal before she answered. "I've been keeping something from you for your own protection. You are not just a scribe bound to the labyrinth, you are its key." "The key?" the protagonist asked, feeling a strange of fear and excitement. "What does that mean?" Mira looked up him, her eyes shining with secrets. "It means you hold the power to save or doom our world, depending on what happens here in this labyrinth." The protagonist felt a shiver run down his spine as he looked at Cal once more. If I am the key, then why is he after me? Kale seeks to use your power for his own gain, Mira explained, her voice barely above a whisper. He believes that by controlling you, he can bend time and reshape reality. Zephyr chimed in, but Kel is not the only one who seeks the time-bending tome. It's said to be hidden deep within the labyrinth's heart, guarded by riddles and traps. What do we do now? The protagonist asked, a sense of urgency growing within him. We cannot let Kel gain control. Mira nodded. We must continue our journey and find the time-bending tome before he does. I believe it's hidden somewhere in this labyrinth, but we'll need to be careful. Kale is sure to come after us once he awakens. The protagonist stood up, his resolve hardening. Then let us prepare for the journey ahead. We cannot afford any delays. As they prepared to leave their temporary camp, the protagonist couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger battle. The labyrinth seemed to stretch on endlessly before them, filled with unknown dangers and hidden secrets, just waiting to be uncovered. But one thing was clear, they had no choice but to face what lay ahead. The group found themselves in a quiet corner of another chamber within the labyrinth's heart, surrounded by stone walls lined with ancient bookshelves. A sense of unease hung heavy in the air as they gathered around the small fire in their temporary camp. Zephyr darted through the shadows, keeping watch for any signs of danger. We must be cautious, Mira said, her voice slow and serious. Kale is relentless, and we cannot afford to be caught off guard. The protagonist looked at her, his eyes filled with determination. He knew he had a role to play in this struggle, but the weight of responsibility was heavy upon his shoulders. We'll find the time-bending tome, he assured them. And when we do, I won't let it fall into Kale's hands. Zephyr suddenly burst from the shadows, startling everyone. Listen, he called out, his voice barely audible. I heard whispers. They're near. I think they know where the tome is hidden. Mira clenched her fist as she leaped to her feet. We have no choice but to confront them now, she said grimly. Prepare yourselves. As they set off deeper into the labyrinth, a wave of shadow seemed to ripple through the stone corridors around them. The group's hearts raced as they prepared for battle, knowing that their lives and possibly the fate of the world hung in the balance. The whispers grew louder until they found themselves standing before another massive stone door, etched with intricate carvings that seemed to dance and shift in the dim light. Mira reached out, touching one of the carvings. This is it, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the cacophony of whispers echoing through the room. The entrance to the heart of our world's creation. With a deep breath, she pushed open the massive door and stepped into another hidden alcove within the chamber. The air was thick with magic as they entered a small chamber filled with countless bookshelves. In the center lay an open book, on top of a pedestal the time-bending tome. Mira's eyes widened and she moved quickly towards it, but before she could reach out to take it, Cal appeared behind her, his eyes gleaming with greed. I've been waiting for this moment, he said, reaching for the tome. The protagonist stood between them, his own connection to the labyrinth surging through him. He knew he had to make a choice, one that would determine not only his fate, but also that of the world. With a deep breath, he reached out and grabbed hold of the tome, feeling an immense power surge through him as it connected with his essence. No! Kale snarled, lunging for the protagonist, but Mira stood firm, blocking his path. A battle ensued between them, their powers clashing in a dazzling display of magic and fury. Meanwhile, Zephyr and the rest of the group fought off Kale's minions as they attempted to take the tome for themselves. In the midst of the chaos, the protagonist felt a strange connection to the time-bending tome, its power coursing through him like liquid fire. As he struggled against Kale and Mira, he realized that it was more than just an artifact, it was a piece of himself, a part of his forgotten past. As the battle raged on, the protagonist began to understand the true nature of his connection to the labyrinth and the world itself. With newfound resolve, he fought back against Kale, determined to protect not just the tome, but also the truth that lay buried within himself. The fight was long and brutal, but in the end, the protagonist managed to overpower Cal, sending him crashing to the ground defeated. Mira looked at him with a mixture of admiration and concern as he stood over their foe, the time-bending tome clutched tightly in his hand. "You did well," she said quietly. "But we cannot rest yet." As they gathered their things, preparing to leave the heart of the labyrinth, the protagonist couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was far from over. They had won this battle, but Cal would not give up so easily. He knew deep down that he would have to face him again and soon. Together, they left the heart of the labyrinth behind them, knowing that the true test lay ahead. With newfound determination, they set off towards whatever challenges awaited them, ready to face whatever came their way. The world's fate rested in their hands, and they would not let it fall into darkness. The unseen scribe of time's labyrinth, the protagonist and Mira cautiously stepped into another chamber within the labyrinth's heart, their hearts pounding with anticipation and fear. The air was thick with tension as Zephyr flitted nervously around them, his tiny form barely visible amidst countless bookshelves lining the walls. "We must tread carefully," Mira whispered, her eyes scanning the room for any sign of Cal or his minions. "The artifact will lead us closer to our goal." They made their way through the stone corridors, stopping occasionally at various alcoves and chambers, searching for clues and hints that might guide them further. Each discovery felt like a small triumph, but they were still far from uncovering the truth of the world's creation. As they ventured deeper into the labyrinth, the group found themselves in another quiet corner of a chamber, this one dimly lit by flickering candles. A single bookshelf stood against the wall, its ancient tome bound in tarnished gold catching the protagonist's eye. He cautiously approached it and opened the book, revealing cryptic inscriptions that seemed to dance before his eyes. "What do you see?" Mira asked, leaning over his shoulder. "I think," the protagonist hesitated, running a finger along the ancient text. "This might be another clue." Zephyr fluttered closer, studying the book as well. "Indeed, I recognize these symbols. It is a map of sorts, guiding us to another hidden alcove within this chamber." The group exchanged glances, their hearts racing with excitement and trepidation. They followed the map's directions, moving through another stone corridor until they reached a small hidden alcove. Inside, the protagonist found another open book on top of a pedestal, its cover emblazoned with the words, "The Chronicles of the Unseen Scribe." Mira took the book reverently, her fingers tracing over the title as if she could feel the weight of history beneath them. "This must be what Cal has been searching for all along," she murmured, "but we cannot let him have it." As they prepared to leave the alcove, a sudden crash echoed through the stone corridors. The group froze, their senses immediately on high alert. Zephyr flew towards the noise, returning moments later with wide eyes and an urgent message. "Cal is here," he whispered frantically. "He has brought reinforcements." Mira cursed under her breath, snatching the Chronicles of the Unseen Scribe from the pedestal and tucking it into her robes. They made their way back through the labyrinth, Cal's minions closing in behind them. A fierce battle ensued, with the protagonist using his newfound connection to the time-bending tome to outmaneuver their opponents. Mira and Zephyr fought valiantly by his side, but they were quickly overwhelmed by the sheer number of Cal's forces. Just when all seemed lost, a wave of shadows enveloped the chamber, driving Cal's minions back with a force that shook the very foundations of the labyrinth. The protagonist and his group looked around in shock as the darkness dissipated, revealing Mira standing before them, her eyes glowing with power. "I have an ally," she explained, her voice barely above a whisper. "One who will help us when we need it most." Inside the heart of the labyrinth, a dimly lit chamber pulsed with an eerie energy, its walls covered in countless bookshelves filled with ancient volumes. Mira stood atop a stone pedestal, her eyes fixed on the massive stone door that guarded another section of the labyrinth. "The next tome is hidden within," she said, her voice echoing through the chamber. "But we must act quickly before Cull finds it." She looked to the protagonist. "You sense its power, don't you?" A strange feeling stirred deep within him, a connection he had long forgotten. The time-bending tome called to him, and he knew that they couldn't let it fall into Cal's hands. Zephyr flitted around them, his laughter like whispers in the wind. If we hurry, we might be able to outrun him for now. Mira nodded, her expression serious. We don't have much time. The labyrinth is vast, but we can't afford to explore every corner. We need to find the time-bending tome and escape before Cal catches up to us. They made their way through the endless stone corridors, each turn revealing more ancient tomes bound in tarnished gold. The air grew thick with anticipation as they drew closer to their goal. Mira led them down a long hallway lined with bookshelves, her senses attuned to the presence of the time-bending tome. She said, coming to a halt at a quiet corner of the chamber. I sense it here. She gestured to an open book on top of one of the countless bookshelves. The protagonist approached cautiously, his eyes never leaving the tome as he reached out and picked it up. The moment their hands touched, a jolt of energy surged through him, and the memory of using the tome came flooding back. He had forgotten so much, but now it all seemed to come rushing back. The time-bending tome, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I remember this. Mira looked at him curiously. You know what it is? Yes, the protagonist replied, holding the tome tightly in his hands. But I'm not sure if I should use its power again. Zephyr giggled, his laughter echoing through the chamber. Oh, come now. It wouldn't be much fun if you didn't try it out, would it? Mira gave him a stern look. We cannot afford to dawdle. Cal will not rest until he has what we possess. The protagonist took a deep breath and focused his thoughts on the tome, feeling the magic coursing through its pages. The world around them began to twist and bend as time slowed, giving him just enough time to see what lay ahead. We must hurry, he said, closing his eyes as he opened the time-bending tome. We can't let Cal catch us. A wave of shadows erupted from the depths of the labyrinth, pouring through a hidden alcove in another chamber deep within the heart of the labyrinth. Mira quickly grabbed the protagonist's arm, pulling him away as the shadows engulfed their temporary camp. We have to run, she said, her voice urgent. Cal has found us. As they sprinted through the stone corridors, protagonist couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that the shadows were closing in on them. He opened the time-bending tome once more, using its power to create a path through the labyrinth, leaping from one hidden alcove to another as they evaded Cal and his minions. Finally, they reached another massive stone door. Mira stopped him before he could open it. We can't stay here, she said, her eyes scanning the shadows that still lingered in the distance. Cal will find us eventually. The protagonist knew she was right, and his heart raced as they stepped out into another stone corridor. The labyrinth stretched before them, endless and dark. But he clutched the time-bending tome tightly, determined to protect it from Cal's grasp and uncover the truth about their world's creation. The protagonist could feel the weight of the world upon his shoulders as they ventured deeper into the labyrinth. Mira, Zephyr, and he had come so far, but they still had much to learn before they could truly understand the power that lay within the time-bending tome and the chronicles of the unseen scribe. As they moved through the dimly lit corridors, Cal's presence seemed to grow stronger. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that Cal would find them soon, but the protagonist pressed on, his resolve unwavering. In another hidden alcove, they found a small chamber filled with countless bookshelves. The air within hummed with magic, and the protagonist could feel the power coursing through the tome in his hands. He knew that they had come to an important crossroads, one that would determine whether they could uncover the truth about their world or be consumed by its darkness. Mira spoke softly, her voice barely audible. We must find a way to defeat Cal once and for all. With the time-bending tome, we can bend time to our advantage, but we must use it wisely. Zephyr giggled, his laughter echoing through the chamber. Oh, I have an idea. Let me help you. He darted between the bookshelves, retrieving another tome bound in tarnished gold. The protagonist's eyes widened as he realized what it was, one of the chronicles of the unseen scribe. Mira nodded, her expression grave. We must study these texts together, she said, her voice filled with determination. If we can learn how to control time and the power within us, Perhaps we can uncover the truth about our world's creation. They spent hours poring over the ancient texts, their minds filled with newfound knowledge and revelations about their world's past. The protagonist could feel the darkness pressing in on them as they delved deeper into the labyrinth, but he refused to give in to fear. He knew that they were close to discovering the truth, and he wouldn't rest until he had uncovered it. As they worked, Kel's presence grew stronger, and the protagonist could feel him closing in on them. Mira looked up from their studies, her eyes narrowed as she listened intently. "He's almost here," she whispered. The protagonist clutched the time-bending tome tightly as they prepared to face Cole one last time. He knew that this would be a battle unlike any other, and he wasn't sure if they would emerge victorious, but he couldn't let fear control him now. He had come too far, and he wouldn't give up without a fight. The sound of footsteps echoed through the stone corridors as Cal approached, his eyes locked on the time-bending tome in the protagonist's hands. "Give me that," he demanded, his voice filled with venom. "It belongs to me." The protagonist stood his ground, refusing to give in to Cal's threats. He knew that if he let the time-bending tome fall into Cal's hands, their world would be lost forever. The darkness seemed to close in around them as they faced off, their fates hanging in the balance. But the protagonist refused to back down. He could feel the power coursing through the tome, and he knew that it was his destiny to wield it. With a fierce cry, he opened the time-bending tome, its pages fluttering open as a wave of energy surged forth. Cale's eyes widened in shock as the power of the tome washed over him, sending him sprawling to the ground. The protagonist felt a surge of triumph, but he knew that their battle was far from over. With a final cry, Cale and his minions retreated, leaving the protagonist and his companions to continue their quest for the truth about their world's creation. As they ventured deeper into the labyrinth, the protagonist couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He knew that their journey would not be easy, but he refused to let fear control him. With Mira and Zephyr by his side, he was determined to uncover the truth about their world and protect it from those who sought to destroy it. Their quest had been long and treacherous, but they were finally on the brink of discovering the hidden truth about their world's creation. The protagonist couldn't wait to see what lay ahead, and he knew that no matter what challenges came their way, he would face them head-on with courage and determination. The unseen scribe of Time's labyrinth, a quiet corner of a chamber deep within the labyrinth's heart. Mira and Zephyr sat closely huddled around an open book on top of a stone pedestal, studying ancient inscriptions that shimmered with arcane energy. The protagonist stood guard near the entrance, scanning the shadows for any sign of Cal or his minions. "It's taking too long," Zephyr complained, fluttering nervously. "We need to find more tomes before he does." Mira looked up from her reading, eyes narrowed in concentration. "Patience, little one. We are getting closer. The secrets we seek are here, just waiting to be unlocked." Suddenly, the stone door creaked open, and Cale stepped through the shadows, a sinister smile spreading across his face as he spotted them. "Ah, my dear friends. I see you've found another time-bending tome," he said, striding confidently towards them. The protagonist tensed, his grip on the hilt of the dagger tightening. "Stay back," he warned, stepping in front of Mira and Zephyr protectively. Cale chuckled softly. "I've come not to fight but to offer a deal." He held out another tome bound in tarnished gold, the time-bending tome gleaming dangerously in his hand. "Give me your tomes, and I will give you this one. Together, we can control time itself." Mira's eyes flashed with anger as she stood, pushing past the protagonist to face Cole. "You think we would ever trust you?" she spat. Cal shrugged nonchalantly. "I have what you desire. It's a fair offer." He looked at each of them in turn, his gaze cold and calculating. "But if you refuse, I will take it by force." The protagonist gritted his teeth, the tension building between them palpable. "I won't let you have what we've fought for," he said firmly. Suddenly, a wave of shadows erupted from behind Cal, revealing a group of his minions. The protagonist leapt into action, summoning the power of the time-bending tome to create shadows that enveloped him and allowed him to move unseen among them. He emerged from the shadows behind one of Cal's minions, striking swiftly before they knew what hit them. Mira and Zephyr joined the fray, their powers combined as they fought to protect the tomes. The chamber echoed with the sounds of battle as the three stood united against Cal and his minions. As the fight reached its climax, Mira and Zephyr managed to hold back Cal's forces long enough for the protagonist to strike, knocking him off balance. Cal fell to the floor, gasping for breath as the protagonist loomed over him. "You underestimated us," the protagonist growled, brandishing his dagger above Cal. "We will not be defeated so easily." Cal's eyes flashed with fury, but he remained defiant. "This is far from over," he snarled, disappearing into the shadows once more. The group gathered around a fire in their temporary camp, discussing their next move as the moon cast long shadows across the stone corridors of the labyrinth. Mira's eyes shimmered with an unusual intensity, her thoughts preoccupied by the ancient tomes they had found. "We must decide which tome is worth the risk," she mused aloud. The Chronicles, or the Time-Bending Tome. Zephyr's mischievous grin illuminated his features as he leaned forward, eager to share his own thoughts. "Have you forgotten that there are more tomes scattered throughout this labyrinth?" Mira sighed, acknowledging Zephyr's point, but remaining focused on their immediate dilemma. "True, but we cannot carry all of them. We must choose wisely." The protagonist stood silently, watching the exchange. He knew that time was running out, and that Cal would not give up easily. The weight of the responsibility for protecting the tomes pressed heavily upon his shoulders. "I will protect both," he declared, looking each member of the group in the eye. "Together, we shall find a way." A sudden tremor shook the ground beneath them, causing the fire to dance wildly as shadows flickered across their faces. A low growl echoed through the stone corridors, followed by the sound of footsteps drawing nearer. "Cal is back," Mira warned, her voice barely above a whisper. "We must prepare for battle." The group quickly extinguished the fire, gathering their weapons and readying themselves for the confrontation ahead. The protagonist could feel his heart racing as he sensed Cal's approach. He closed his eyes, focusing on the power within him, drawing upon the time-bending abilities that had eluded him until now. "We will not let him take what is rightfully ours," he murmured to himself. "I will protect these tomes at any cost." The unseen scribe of Time's labyrinth as the shadows dissipated and the fire flickered back to life. Mira looked around their temporary camp, her gaze lingering on the time-bending tome that lay within a small alcove atop a stone pedestal nearby. She could sense its immense power, but also the darkness it contained, a darkness that seemed to mirror Cal's own ambitions. "We need to be careful," she warned, breaking the silence. "The time-bending tome is too dangerous to wield recklessly." Zephyr chirped in agreement from his perch on her shoulder. "It could give us the edge we need against Cal, but it also puts us at risk." The protagonist stared intently into the fire, his eyes reflecting a deep, unspoken determination. "We can't let him control time," he said quietly. "I won't let that happen," Mira nodded gravely, "but we must tread carefully. The tome has its own perils." She closed her eyes, focusing on the ancient inscriptions etched into the cover of the time-bending tome. "There is a way to harness its power without succumbing to its darkness," she mused aloud. "How?" asked Zephyr curiously. Mira opened her eyes, a knowing smile playing on her lips as she looked at the protagonist. "By understanding the secrets of our world's creation, secrets that lie within the chronicles themselves." The protagonist stood up and approached the alcove housing the time-bending tome. He picked it up, its weight heavy in his hands. As he turned to face Mira, Zephyr fluttered around him playfully. "This is our chance," the protagonist said resolutely. "We'll need to work together if we want to unlock the power within these tomes and defeat Cal." A sudden rumble echoed through the stone corridors of the labyrinth, causing Mira and Zephyr to jump. The group exchanged worried glances as another tremor shook their temporary home. "He's coming," Mira whispered, her voice filled with dread. The protagonist tightened his grip on the time-bending tome. "We won't let him take what's ours." He looked at Mira and Zephyr, determination burning in his eyes. "Ready yourselves. We have a battle to fight." Mira, Zephyr, and the protagonist huddled around a small campfire in the heart of the labyrinth, their faces etched with exhaustion and worry. The air was thick with tension, and an eerie stillness hung over them all. "The tremors grow stronger," Mira said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Cal will be here soon." Zephyr's eyes glinted as he peered into the flames, his small form shifting nervously. "We must hurry." "The time-bending tome has been calling out to me, urging us forward." The protagonist nodded grimly. I felt it too. He took a deep breath and stood up, bracing himself for the next step in their journey. They ventured deeper into the labyrinth, moving cautiously along stone corridors lined with countless bookshelves. The air grew colder as they approached another massive stone door, its intricate carvings glowing faintly under the dim light of a single flickering torch. "This must be it," Mira whispered, her hand hovering over the cold stone surface. "The entrance to the hidden chamber." With a collective breath, they pushed open the heavy doors and stepped into another quiet corner of their world's creation. Before them lay an ancient chamber filled with bookshelves that seemed to stretch on forever. At its center stood a small pedestal with a stone pedestal and an open book on top. "The Chronicles," Zephyr breathed, his voice barely audible over the silence. "We have found what we've been searching for." Mira approached cautiously, her heart pounding in her chest. She reached out, her fingers brushing against the worn leather binding of the ancient tome bound in tarnished gold. As she opened it, a wave of power washed over them all, sending shivers down their spines. "It's time," the protagonist said firmly, his eyes locked on the open book before him. "We must decipher these pages if we are to stand against Cal." As they delved deeper into the Chronicles, each page revealed more about their world and the forgotten history that had been hidden from them for so long. They learned of Cal's past and his complex connection to the protagonist, a revelation that left them reeling. "We must be careful," Mira warned. "There are dangers lurking in these pages." But as they continued to study the ancient text, another tome caught their attention, the time-bending tome. Its pages called out to Zephyr, urging him to take it and use its power for their own defense against Cal. "I must," he said hesitantly. "The time has come." As he reached out for the tome, a wave of shadows erupted from the depths of the labyrinth, their dark forms closing in around them. With no other choice, they fought back, using every ounce of strength they had to hold off the encroaching darkness. In the midst of the battle, the protagonist felt a surge of power coursing through him. He reached out for the time-bending tome and grasped it firmly in his hands, the weight of its power almost crushing him beneath its influence. "I will not let it consume me," he said, his voice shaking with determination. "But neither will I allow Cal to take what is rightfully ours." As the battle raged on, they fought for their lives and the fate of their world. The protagonist held tightly onto the time-bending tome, feeling its power coursing through his veins as he battled against the shadows that threatened to overwhelm them all. In the end, they emerged victorious, but at a heavy cost. The protagonist had given in to the dark power of the tome, his eyes glowing with an eerie light as he stood over the defeated shadows. "We have what we need," Mira said softly, her voice filled with both relief and fear. "But we cannot let this darkness consume us." As they retreated back to their temporary home within the labyrinth, they knew that their greatest challenge still lay ahead, defeating Cal and reclaiming control of the time-bending tomes before it was too late. The unseen scribe of time's labyrinth, the group huddled around a small fire at their temporary camp within the labyrinth. The protagonist studied the time-bending tome in his hands, his eyes narrowing as he traced ancient symbols with trembling fingers. The text was cryptic and difficult to decipher, but it seemed to reveal a hidden path deep within the heart of the labyrinth. Zephyr flitted around the fire, his laughter echoing softly through the stone corridors. "The heart of our world's creation awaits. Let us set out at first light." Mira nodded gravely, her eyes flicking between the protagonist and Zephyr. "We must proceed with caution," she warned. "Cal is still after us, and his power grows stronger by the day." As dawn broke, they ventured deeper into the labyrinth, their senses heightened for any sign of danger. The stone corridors twisted and turned, seemingly endless, but a faint glimmer of light guided them forward. They arrived at another massive stone door, adorned with intricate carvings that seemed to dance before their eyes. Mira approached the door cautiously, her fingers tracing the ancient inscriptions as she whispered incantations under her breath. The door swung open slowly, revealing a long hallway lined with countless bookshelves. A quiet corner of this chamber held a hidden alcove, where an open book lay upon a stone pedestal. The protagonist stepped forward, his heart pounding in his chest. He reached out and took the book from the pedestal, feeling its power surge through him like lightning. It was the Chronicles of the Unseen Scribe, a tome that contained the key to their world's creation. As he opened the book, Mira stiffened, her eyes widening in shock. This is not what I expected, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Zephyr flew closer, his curiosity piqued. What is it? Mira hesitated, then spoke in a hushed tone, her words filled with dread. It speaks the protagonist as more than just a scribe. He is the key to saving or dooming our world. The protagonist stared at the pages before him, his mind racing as he tried to make sense of it all. He felt a wave of memories flooding through him, fragments of his past that were buried deep within his soul. Cal and his connection to the protagonist, a truth he had long forgotten but was now slowly being reclaimed. Suddenly they heard a distant rumbling sound, growing louder by the second. The group exchanged worried glances as shadows began to creep towards them from the stone corridors. Cal and his minions were upon them, seeking revenge for their earlier defeat. The protagonist felt the power of the time-bending tome course through his veins, surging forward to meet the approaching threat. With Mira and Zephyr by his side, he prepared himself for battle, ready to defend the Chronicles and protect what was rightfully theirs. The confrontation was fierce, with shadows dancing around them as they fought for control of the tomes. The protagonist struggled against Cal's attempts to take the time-bending tome from him, but he found himself growing weaker with each passing moment. His connection to the tomes began to consume him, threatening to overwhelm him completely. Mira and Zephyr fought valiantly by his side, using every trick they knew to fend off Cal's minions, but as the battle raged on, it became clear that they were outnumbered and outmatched. The protagonist felt himself slipping away, his grip on reality fading like smoke in the wind. In a desperate attempt to save them all, Mira reached out with her mind, calling upon ancient powers she had long kept hidden. With a burst of energy, she sent Cal and his minions tumbling backwards, their shadows dissipating into the darkness. Exhausted, they collapsed at the feet of the protagonist, who lay sprawled on the ground, the time-bending tome clutched tightly in his hand. Mira knelt beside him, her face filled with concern. "The tomes are too powerful for any one person to wield," she whispered urgently. "We must find a way to divide their power among us." Zephyr nodded in agreement. "I have an idea, but it will be dangerous," he warned. "Are you ready, protagonist?" The protagonist looked up at them, his eyes filled with determination. "There is no other choice," he said softly. "For the sake of our world and its creation, we must find a way to divide the power of the tomes." With that, they set off on their dangerous quest, knowing that the fate of their world hung in the balance. The protagonist felt the weight of his newfound responsibilities bearing down upon him, but he was not alone. Mira and Zephyr stood by his side, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Inside the labyrinth's heart, the group finds a hidden alcove illuminated by flickering torches. The protagonist approaches an ancient bookshelf lined with countless tomes. He reaches out and his fingers brush against one bound in tarnished gold. As he opens it, a wave of energy envelopes him, stirring memories that had long been forgotten. "I remember," whispers the protagonist, eyes wide as he gazes at the open book. This is everything." Mira and Zephyr exchange worried glances. They had hoped to find answers, but the protagonist's newfound knowledge seemed too much for them to handle. Suddenly, a rumble echoes through the stone corridors. "Cal!" shouts Mira, gripping her staff tightly. "He's here." The group prepares for battle as they hear footsteps approaching, the sound growing louder by the second. Cal emerges from the shadows, a a sinister smile spreading across his face as he lays eyes on the protagonist. "I knew I would find you here," he taunts, revealing another tome bound in tarnished gold. "Hand over the chronicles and the time-bending tomes, or I'll take them by force." The protagonist stands tall, refusing to give in to Kyle's demands. Mira and Zephyr stand by his side, determined to protect him and the artifacts at all costs. As the battle ensues, the group fights back against Kyle and his minions, their combined powers clashing violently within the labyrinth's heart. In the midst of the chaos, the protagonist reaches out for the time-bending tome on the stone pedestal nearby. With a surge of energy, he grabs it just as Kel lunges at him. The protagonist clutches the tome tightly, feeling its power coursing through his veins. "No," cries Kel, reaching out for the tome but unable to take it from the protagonist's grasp. "You don't deserve this power." The protagonist and Kel face off in a clash of wills as Mira and Zephyr defend against Kel's minions. The group fights valiantly, but they know that victory is far from certain. As the battle reaches its climax, the labyrinth shakes violently, the walls cracking and crumbling around them. "We must leave," shouts Mira over the chaos. The labyrinth is collapsing. With their backs against the wall, the group retreats to a quiet corner of the chamber. The protagonist clutches the time-bending tome tightly as they flee the collapsing labyrinth. They stumble upon a temporary camp within another part of the world's creation, but the danger is far from over. "We must be careful," warns Mira. "Kale will not give up so easily." The unseen scribe of Time's labyrinth as shadows loomed near, the small group huddled around a roaring campfire within their temporary home within the labyrinth. The protagonist, Mira, and Zephyr shared glances, their eyes reflecting the flickering flames as they pondered the events that had led them this far. The ancient tome bound in tarnished gold lay open on a stone pedestal, its pages filled with intricate carvings that seemed alive under the firelight. The chronicles of the unseen scribe had been their beacon through the labyrinth, guiding them towards answers about their world's creation and the forgotten memories buried deep within the protagonist's mind. Zephyr, with a mischievous twinkle in his eyes, pointed at the time-bending tome. "You know what this means, don't you?" The protagonist nodded solemnly, clutching the small tome tightly within his hands. He had tasted its power firsthand when he was consumed by darkness upon grasping it. The memory still sent shivers down his spine. "We are closer than ever before." Mira spoke softly, her voice barely audible over the crackling fire. But Kel will not stop until he possesses both the chronicles and the time-bending tome. A sudden silence fell upon the group as they listened to the distant sound of footsteps echoing through the stone corridors. The protagonist's heart raced as he gripped the time-bending tome tighter, sensing Kel's presence growing nearer. "We should prepare," Mira said, rising from her seat. "I will scout ahead while you fortify our defenses." The protagonist and Zephyr followed suit, ready to face whatever awaited them in the labyrinth's heart. As they moved towards a long hallway lined with countless bookshelves, they could hear the footsteps growing louder. They knew Kel was close. As they reached a quiet corner of another chamber within the labyrinth's heart, they prepared themselves for battle. The weight of their mission weighed heavily on their shoulders, but they were not alone. They had each other, and the power of the time-bending tomes to protect their world from Kale's grasp. The air within the labyrinth was thick with tension and anticipation as the group huddled around their temporary campfire. The protagonist, Mira, and Zephyr clung to what remained of their strength after countless days spent traversing the labyrinth in search of answers about their world's creation. The chronicles of the unseen scribe lay open on a stone pedestal before them, its pages filled with ancient inscriptions and cryptic symbols that seemed to dance as they flickered in the firelight. The group had come far since first discovering the hidden alcove within another chamber deep within the labyrinth's heart. Mira studied the chronicles intently, her eyes tracing over the intricate carvings with a renewed sense of urgency. Her secrets, buried for centuries, threatened to surface as Cal grew ever closer to capturing what they sought. Zephyr flitted among the countless bookshelves that lined another long hallway, his laughter echoing through the stone corridors. The mischievous sprite knew something was amiss. He could feel it in the air. His knowledge of their world's creation told him that danger lurked nearby. The protagonist closed his eyes, focusing his thoughts on the memories long forgotten. He felt a strange connection to this place, as if the labyrinth had been created just for them. But there was another presence in the labyrinth, one far more sinister than any they had yet encountered. In the quiet corner of their chamber, the protagonist could sense Curl's approach. He knew that his adversary would not rest until he possessed the chronicles and the time-bending tome. As the enigmatic figure emerged from the shadows, a wave of cold dread washed over the group. "You cannot keep this secret forever," Curl said with an icy grin, his eyes flickering with malevolence. "I will have what is rightfully mine." Mira stepped forward, her eyes never leaving Curl's. "I will protect these chronicles with my life," she declared, her voice steady despite the fear that trembled beneath the surface. "Then we shall see who is truly worthy of them," Curl replied, drawing a dagger from his belt. He lunged at Mira, but the protagonist was quick to intervene, blocking the attack with a cry. The battle that followed was fierce and brutal, each side determined to emerge victorious. Zephyr flitted among the combatants, using his magic to disrupt Curl's movements and aid the group whenever possible. The protagonist fought with renewed determination, feeling the weight of their world on his shoulders. As they struggled against Curl and his minions, the protagonist felt a strange connection to the time-bending tome in his grasp. It seemed to pulse with energy, its power coursing through him like liquid fire. He could feel the potential it held, the power to bend time itself. But such power came at a heavy cost. In the heat of battle, the protagonist made a decision. He would use the tome's power to turn the tide in their favor, even if it meant sacrificing himself. With a cry, he channeled the tome's energy, unleashing a wave of time magic that sent Curl and his minions sprawling back into the shadows. The battle was over, but the tension did not abate. The group knew that this was far from the end of their struggle against Curl. They had won this round, but there would be many more to come. As they rested in their temporary camp, the protagonist could feel a strange sense of peace wash over him. He had made a choice, one that would shape not only his destiny, but the fate of their world as well. The Unseen Scribe of Time's Labyrinth, Episode 41. Tides turned. The group huddled in their temporary camp within the labyrinth, their eyes reflecting a mix of exhaustion and determination. The protagonist rested on a large stone pedestal, clutching the time-bending tome close to his chest while Zephyr tended to his wounds. Mira stood nearby, her gaze fixed on the distance as if sensing Curl's presence. "Are you well?" Mira asked the protagonist, her voice soft but filled with concern. He managed a weak smile and nodded. "Good," she said, her eyes flickering with relief. "The time-bending tome is powerful, but it comes at great cost." Zephyr chimed in, his voice playful yet anxious. "True, but our friend here has shown he's willing to pay the price when necessary." The protagonist chuckled, his laughter echoing throughout the stone corridors of their temporary home. Mira turned her attention towards Zephyr. "Be that as it may, we must be cautious," she warned. "Curl is not one to let go easily. He will return for the tomes." The protagonist's eyes narrowed. "And I won't give him what he seeks without a fight," he declared, his resolve unwavering. Mira nodded in agreement, her own determination shining through. Zephyr, sensing the tension between them, playfully intervened. "Now that we have the power to bend time, perhaps it's time for us to take the offensive and find the hidden chamber." The protagonist agreed, ready to put the time-bending tome to good use. Mira led the group through the labyrinth's winding stone corridors, her keen senses guiding them towards their destination. Zephyr flitted around them, pointing out cryptic clues along the way, while the protagonist followed closely behind, clutching the precious time-bending tome tightly in his hands. As they ventured deeper into the labyrinth, they stumbled upon a hidden alcove within another chamber. The walls were adorned with ancient inscriptions that seemed to pulse with energy. Mira approached cautiously, tracing her fingers over the carvings as if communing with them. "This is it," she whispered, her voice filled with awe. The protagonist's eyes widened, feeling a surge of anticipation coursing through him. He could sense that the hidden chamber was near and it held answers to questions he had longed to ask since his memories returned. "Then let us enter," he said, stepping forward boldly. Zephyr giggled in delight as they made their way into the chamber, its walls adorned with countless bookshelves stretching up towards the ceiling. In the quiet corner of the room stood an open book on top of a stone pedestal, the Chronicles of the Unseen Scribe. The protagonist's heart raced as he approached the pedestal. His fingers trembled as he reached out to touch the cover, feeling a strange connection to the ancient tome bound in tarnished gold. "This is it," he murmured, his voice filled with reverence. "My lost chronicles." As they began to leaf through the chronicles, Zephyr darted from bookshelf to bookshelf, eagerly searching for more clues about their world's creation. Meanwhile, Mira stood guard, her senses alert for any signs of Kale or his minions. The protagonist, however, could sense that they were not alone. A presence lingered in the shadows, watching them closely. He turned to Mira with a frown, feeling a growing sense of unease. "I feel watched," he said quietly. She nodded, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the chamber for any signs of danger. Suddenly, the air around them shifted, and shadows surged forward from the darkness, forming a wave that threatened to overwhelm them. The protagonist's grip tightened on the time-bending tome as he focused his will, unleashing a burst of time magic that sent the shadows scattering back into the darkness. Mira and Zephyr moved quickly, their combined strength allowing them to fend off Kale's minions, while the protagonist stood his ground, holding the time-bending tome aloft as if it were a shield. The battle was fierce, but they managed to hold their own until the shadows retreated once more. Breathing heavily, the group regrouped in a quiet corner of the chamber. The protagonist could sense that Kale was near. He could feel his adversary's anger and determination burning like embers within the darkness. "We cannot rest here," Mira said firmly. "We must find a way to confront him directly." Zephyr nodded in agreement, his voice filled with determination. "Then let us use the time-bending tome to our advantage," he suggested. The protagonist agreed, ready to take the fight to Kale and put an end to their conflict once and for all. Together they crafted a plan to lure Kale into a trap. Using the time-bending tome, they manipulated time to create the illusion of weakness, leading him into a hidden alcove within another chamber deep within the labyrinth's heart. As soon as he entered, Mira and Zephyr were waiting for him, their combined strength allowing them to overpower Kale and seize the time-bending tome from his grasp. The protagonist stepped forward, feeling a strange sense of relief wash over him as he stared down at Kale. "You will not take what is rightfully mine," he declared, his voice echoing through the stone corridors. With a flick of his wrist, he unleashed a burst of time magic that sent Kale stumbling back into the shadows, defeated and humiliated. Mira and Zephyr moved to stand beside him, their faces filled with determination. "We have won this battle," Mira said, her voice steady and strong. "But our war against Kale is far from over." The protagonist nodded in agreement, aware that the true challenge lay ahead. As they left the hidden chamber, the protagonist felt a strange sense of peace wash over him. He knew that he had come closer to understanding his role as a time-bound scribe and the destiny that awaited him, but he also knew that the battle was far from won and that the fate of their world rested upon their shoulders. As they rested in their temporary camp within the labyrinth, the group shared stories of their pasts and the circumstances that led them to this point. The protagonist felt a strange connection with Mira, who remained distant and guarded about her own history. Zephyr, ever playful, danced around the fire, weaving tales of the world's creation and its hidden corners, captivating all in attendance. The following morning they ventured deeper into the labyrinth. The stone corridors twisted and turned, leading them to another massive stone door. Zephyr pointed out that the door was marked with ancient carvings depicting scenes of a cataclysmic event that shook the world's creation. "This door may lead us to another part of our world," Mira said, her eyes reflecting a mix of excitement and apprehension. "But be warned, it is guarded by powerful magic." The group prepared for the challenge ahead, their resolve unbroken. As they approached the door, they sensed a presence nearby. Turning, they saw Kel standing before them, his eyes gleaming with malice and hunger. "You have eluded me long enough," he sneered, his voice echoing ominously through the corridor. "I will not let you take what is rightfully mine." With a snap of his fingers, shadows surged forth from the darkness, engulfing the group in a wave of darkness. The protagonist felt a surge of power within him, a connection to the time-bending tome he had claimed. With a shout, he unleashed a burst of energy that repelled the shadows, buying them precious moments to react. Mira and Zephyr stood back to back, their eyes locked on Kel as they prepared for battle. The protagonist, clutching the time-bending tome tightly, focused his energy, feeling its power coursing through him. He knew that this was a fight not just for their lives, but for the fate of the world. The air crackled with magic as the battle commenced. Kel summoned more shadows to aid him, and the group fought back with every ounce of strength they possessed. The protagonist felt himself growing weaker as he used the time-bending tome's power, but he refused to give in. In a desperate move, Mira charged at Kel, her staff glowing with a bright light. With a cry, she struck him, sending him flying back into another massive stone door. The door slammed shut, trapping Kel inside. Exhausted but victorious, the group collapsed onto the cold, hard floor. The time-bending tome lay beside them, its power draining from the protagonist's grasp. They had won this battle, but they knew that their war against Kel was far from over. As Mira and Zephyr tended to their wounds, the protagonist stared at the closed door. He could sense a presence within, one that seemed familiar yet distant. The echoes of his forgotten past called out to him, drawing him closer. "We should move on," Mira said softly, her voice filled with concern. "There are more challenges ahead." "Hi." The unseen scribe of Time's labyrinth. As the days passed, the group found themselves resting within a hidden alcove. The protagonist sat by the fire, tending to his wounds and listening to Zephyr playfully tease Mira about her past. The librarian remained silent, her eyes lost in thought. "Mira," the protagonist began, "you've been quiet lately." She turned to him, a wistful expression on her face. "There are things I cannot share, but know that I am loyal to our cause and will continue to guide you through this labyrinth." Protagonist nodded, the weight of Mira's secret adding to the tension within their temporary home. As they settled in for the night, a chill ran through the air, a premonition of danger lurking ahead. In the dark of the night, the group was awoken by an ominous sound echoing from the stone corridors. The protagonist grabbed his dagger, alerting the others as they gathered around the fire. "It's Kel," Mira whispered, her voice barely above a whisper. "We must move quickly." The group crept through the labyrinth, their hearts pounding with fear and anticipation. They reached a massive stone door, its intricate carvings glowing faintly in the dark. As they approached, it opened, revealing another long hallway lined with countless bookshelves. A quiet corner of the chamber lay ahead, a perfect ambush spot for Kel's minions. The group moved carefully, Mira and Zephyr leading the way, their senses heightened as they searched for any sign of danger. "There," Zephyr whispered, pointing to a hidden alcove. "We must take cover." The group huddled together as shadows flickered in the corner, revealing Kel's minions. The protagonist readied his dagger, waiting for their attack. As the battle commenced, the time-bending tome glowed in the protagonist's hand, its power coursing through him. He fought with newfound strength and agility, countering Kel's minions' attacks with precision and speed. Mira and Zephyr fought alongside him, their combined efforts pushing back the enemy forces. As the last of Kel's minions fell, Mira turned to face Kel himself. "You are no match for me," she spat, her eyes blazing with determination. "The labyrinth is mine now." Kel laughed, his eyes flickering with malice. "We shall see about that." The protagonist stepped forward, the time-bending tome raised high. He unleashed its power, creating a wave of energy that sent Kel tumbling back, slamming against another massive stone door. The group watched as it closed, trapping their adversary within. As they caught their breath, Mira looked at the protagonist with newfound respect. "You have grown strong," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But this is not over yet," he replied, his gaze fixed on the stone door that held Kel captive. We must continue to uncover the truth about our world's creation. The group nodded in agreement, moving deeper into the labyrinth, ready for whatever lay ahead. The shadows of their past continued to haunt them, but they pressed on, driven by hope and determination. They knew that the final confrontation with Kurl was coming, and they would be prepared when it arrived. The end, for now. Within the heart of the labyrinth, the group found themselves in a long hallway lined with countless bookshelves. Mira's eyes scanned the rows of ancient tomes, searching for a familiar title. The protagonist stood beside her, his mind still reeling from the battle against Cal and his minions. "This is where it all begins," whispered Zephyr, flitting around the group like a gust of wind. "The secrets of creation lie here." Mira's gaze lingered on an open book atop a stone pedestal, its pages yellowed with age. She reached out her hand, gently touching the cover emblazoned with intricate carvings. The protagonist joined her, feeling the weight of history beneath his fingertips. "The Chronicles," Mira murmured, her voice barely audible. "I've searched for these throughout the labyrinth." Zephyr darted closer to them, his eyes shining with excitement. "Ah, a hidden chamber. This must be it." He flitted ahead, disappearing down one of the corridors. The protagonist looked at Mira, who nodded gravely. "We'd best catch up," she said, already moving toward the corridor where Zephyr had vanished. They followed him through twisting stone passages, finally reaching a small chamber. Inside sat another massive stone door, its surface carved with symbols and runes that seemed to dance in the dim light. Mira took a deep breath before addressing the protagonist. "This is where our journey ends," she said solemnly, "or begins anew." The protagonist stared at the door, his heart racing. He felt the power of the labyrinth pulsing through him, urging him to open it and claim what lay beyond. But he hesitated, remembering Kael's warnings about the consequences of meddling with such ancient forces. Zephyr flitted around them, his voice barely audible. "This is your destiny, protagonist, to unlock the secrets of time itself." Mira looked at him sternly. "We must proceed carefully," she said, her eyes never leaving the door. "The consequences of our actions will echo through eternity." With a deep breath, the protagonist reached out and pushed open the massive stone door. As it creaked open, they felt a surge of energy course through them, making their hair stand on end. Beyond the door lay another long hallway lined with countless bookshelves. At its end stood another quiet corner of a chamber, where an open book sat upon a pedestal. The Chronicles of the Unseen Scribe glowed with an otherworldly light. "We've found it," whispered Zephyr, awestruck. "The last piece of the puzzle," Mira nodded, her eyes filled with determination. "We must be careful," she warned. "Cal will stop at nothing to claim this for himself." The protagonist looked at Mira, feeling a newfound resolve. He knew that their journey was far from over. They would need to decipher the Chronicles, uncovering the hidden truth of the world's creation and confronting Cal once more. But for now, they celebrated their victory, knowing that they had taken one step closer to saving or dooming the world. As they sat in their temporary camp within the labyrinth, they felt a sense of peace wash over them. They had come far since their journey began, but they knew that the greatest battles still lay ahead. With the Chronicles now in their possession, they prepared themselves for whatever challenges awaited them in the heart of the labyrinth. The unseen scribe of time's labyrinth, the group made camp in a quiet corner of another chamber within the labyrinth's heart. Zephyr flitted about, her eyes alight with curiosity as she explored the ancient books lining the walls. Protagonist studied the open book on top of a stone pedestal, his fingers tracing over intricate carvings that seemed to dance before his eyes. Mira sat nearby, her gaze fixed on the massive stone door they had passed through earlier in the day. She knew all too well that Kael would not rest until he had what was rightfully his, the Chronicles of the Unseen Scribe and the time-bending tome. "I wonder if we've truly escaped him yet," she murmured, a shadow of concern flickering across her face. The protagonist looked up from the book, meeting her gaze. "We have not seen him since we entered this chamber, but we must prepare for his return." He rose to his feet and walked over to Mira, taking her hand in his. Together, We will uncover the truth of our world's creation and ensure that Kel cannot manipulate time for his own gain. Mira nodded, her eyes shining with determination. I believe you are right. We must be vigilant and ready to face him at any moment. A sudden rustling in the shadows sent chills down their spines. Zephyr's laughter rang out as she appeared before them. Looks like he found us, she said, a mischievous smile playing on her lips. What does he want this time? The protagonist asked, his hand tightening around Mira's. Zephyr's eyes darted towards the time-bending tome resting nearby. I think he wants another artifact, she answered softly. But I have a feeling that you're going to give him quite the surprise. The protagonist took a deep breath, his resolve hardening as he looked at Mira and Zephyr. Then let us prepare for battle. With a flick of her wrist, Mira summoned a dagger from thin air, its blade shimmering with an ethereal light. The protagonist reached out to the time-bending tome, his fingers brushing against its ancient leather cover. As he closed his eyes and focused, the book seemed to come alive in his hands, the runes and symbols glowing brightly as it responded to his touch. Kel appeared before them moments later, a sardonic smile curling his lips as he took in the sight of the time-bending tome. Ah, I see you've found another toy, he sneered, a wave of shadows swirling around him. His minions followed close behind, their eyes glowing with hunger for the power contained within the tome. Mira stepped forward, her dagger held high. You will not take what is rightfully ours without a fight. The protagonist raised the time-bending tome, his eyes locked on Kel's as he focused on bending time itself. This world was created by more than just you, he said, his voice echoing through the chamber. And it will not be shaped by your selfish desires. A battle erupted between the two sides, the air crackling with energy as they clashed. The protagonist and Mira fought side by side, their combined strength holding Kel back for a time. But even with Zephyr's aid, it soon became clear that they were outnumbered. As the battle raged on, the protagonist felt his grip on the time-bending tome slipping, the power within it threatening to consume him. He knew he must make a choice: let the tome take him or find another way to defeat Kel and save their world. With a burst of strength born from desperation, the protagonist lunged at Kel, his eyes shining with newfound determination. The two locked in combat, each trying to gain control over the time-bending tome. As they struggled, Mira and Zephyr fought valiantly against Kel's minions, their every blow striking a blow for the future of their world. In the end, it was the protagonist who emerged victorious, having managed to bend time itself to his will, sending Kel and his minions tumbling backwards. He collapsed to his knees, the time-bending tome slipping from his grasp as he gasped for breath. Mira rushed to his side, her heart pounding with worry. Zephyr floated above them, a look of amazement on her face. You did it, she whispered, her eyes shining with admiration. I didn't think you could do it. The protagonist looked up at Mira, his eyes meeting hers for a moment before the world around them began to flicker and shake. He felt a strange sensation coursing through him as memories flooded back, memories of a time long past, when he was not just a scribe but a hero, destined to save their world from destruction. As the chaos subsided, the protagonist stood once more, the weight of his true identity resting heavily upon his shoulders. I am not just a scribe, he said softly, his voice echoing through the chamber. I am the key to saving or dooming our world. Inside the heart of the labyrinth, Mira and Zephyr tended to a weakened protagonist as he recuperated from his battle with Kel. A small group's camp was set up nearby, their temporary home within this mysterious world they now called their own. He will return, Mira warned, her eyes flickering with concern. His interest in the chronicles and the time-bending tomes cannot be ignored. Zephyr shook his head, his mischievous grin replaced by a serious expression. We have to prepare for when he does. The time has come to use the tome's power wisely. The protagonist groaned as he sat up, clutching his side. What are we going to do? He asked, looking between them with determination burning in his eyes. Mira reached out, placing a comforting hand on the protagonist's arm. We will reclaim what is rightfully ours and stop Kel from manipulating time for his gain. Zephyr nodded, his tiny form standing tall. Together we can do this. Now that you know your true purpose, our chances of saving the world have never been better." As they discussed their plan, the shadows began to dance upon the stone walls of the labyrinth. A chilling wind swept through their temporary camp, sending a shiver down the protagonist's spine. "Something is coming," he warned, his gaze fixed on the darkness. Kale returns. With weapons in hand, Mira and Zephyr stood beside him as they awaited their adversary. The shadows coalesced into a massive figure, Kale stepping forward, his eyes burning with malice. "You've made quite an impression," he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "But I will not let you stand in my way any longer." The protagonist stepped forward, his resolve unwavering. "I will protect what is mine and the world we call home. You will not take it from us." With a cackle, Kale raised his hands, sending a wave of shadows toward them. The small group fought valiantly, their combined powers holding off the assault as they maneuvered around the labyrinth's stone corridors. In another hidden alcove within a chamber deep within the labyrinth's heart, Kale found an open book on top of a stone pedestal. The time-bending tome lay before him, its intricate carvings glowing with an eerie light. "This will be yours," he muttered to himself, reaching out to grasp the powerful artifact. The protagonist appeared behind him, his eyes flashing with the power of the chronicles. "Not if I can help it." With a swift strike, the protagonist disarmed Kale, sending the time-bending tome flying from his grasp. As they battled, their powers clashed, the labyrinth shaking around them. In another quiet corner of the chamber, Mira and Zephyr fought off Kale's minions, their numbers overwhelming but not enough to break through their defenses. "We must end this now," the protagonist shouted, his voice echoing through the stone corridors. "Together, we can stop him." With renewed determination, they focused their powers on Kale, pushing back against the tide of darkness that threatened to consume them all. As they battled, the protagonist could feel the weight of his past as a hero pressing down upon him. In the heat of the fight, Mira and Zephyr managed to fend off Kale's minions, leaving him vulnerable. With a final surge of power, the protagonist struck Kale, sending him crashing to the ground, unconscious. As they caught their breath, the protagonist reached down, clutching the time-bending tome tightly. "We did it," he panted, looking between Mira and Zephyr with pride. Mira nodded, her eyes shining with relief. "But this is not the end. We must ensure that Kale never rises again." Zephyr smiled, his mischievous grin returning. "I have an idea. With the power of the chronicles and the time-bending tome, we can create a new future for our world." The unseen scribe of Time's labyrinth, the warmth of the campfire danced across the group's faces as they shared stories of their past lives, while Mira and Zephyr pored over ancient tomes in search of clues. The protagonist gazed into the fire, lost in thought. He sensed Kale's presence long before anyone else did, his hunter's instincts awakened by the faint whisper of magic. "Mira," he whispered, pulling her away from her book. Zephyr, the mischievous sprite, looked up from his own tome and squinted into the darkness, sensing the danger lurking nearby. The trio exchanged a silent glance as Kale emerged from the shadows, a sly smile playing at the corners of his lips. "I've been waiting for you," he said, his voice echoing ominously in the still night air. "You may have won this time, but I will not let you keep what is rightfully mine." Zephyr darted forward, his small form disappearing into the darkness to flank Kale, while Mira positioned herself between him and the protagonist. Kale raised a hand, revealing the time-bending tome clutched tightly in his grip. A shiver ran through Mira's bones as she remembered their first encounter. She had been a librarian tasked with keeping these artifacts safe from those like Kale who sought to use them for selfish purposes. "You should have left me alone when you had the chance," she warned him, drawing her dagger. "I will not let you take what I have fought so hard to protect." Kale laughed coldly. "You are no match for me, librarian, and neither is he." His gaze flicked towards the protagonist, who stood silently, his eyes reflecting the firelight. "But perhaps there is something in you worth using." A wave of shadows erupted from Kale's side as Mira and Zephyr launched themselves at him. The protagonist watched the chaos unfold, feeling a surge of power coursing through him. He reached out for the time-bending tome, gripping it tightly in his hand as he sent Cal and his minions tumbling back. Enough, he growled, his voice echoing with newfound authority. You will not take what I have earned. The battle raged on around them, Mira and Zephyr fighting valiantly against the shadows, while the protagonist held Cal at bay. As they fought, fragments of forgotten memories began to return to him, his past as a scribe, his duty to protect the chronicles, and the secret that lay within their pages. You have grown powerful, scribe, Cal sneered, struggling to break free from the protagonist's grip. But you will never be able to defeat me. The protagonist felt a surge of determination well up within him. I will not let you destroy this world, he declared, his resolve unwavering. And I will do whatever it takes to stop you. As the battle reached its climax, the protagonist used every ounce of strength he possessed to push Cal back, finally sending him tumbling away from the camp. With a triumphant cry, he turned to Mira and Zephyr. We have won this time, he said, his voice filled with newfound pride. The trio gathered around the fire, their hearts pounding with adrenaline as they watched Cal disappear into the darkness. They had survived another battle, but they knew that this was far from over. The protagonist clutched the time-bending tome tightly to his chest, feeling the weight of responsibility resting heavily upon him. We must be careful, Mira warned as they began to discuss their next steps. Cal will not give up so easily. Zephyr nodded in agreement. He will return with more power at his command. We must prepare ourselves for the battles to come. The protagonist felt a sense of dread settle over him, but he knew that they had no choice. They would face whatever challenges lay ahead and fight to protect their world from Cal's destructive ambitions. As the fire died down, he looked at Mira and Zephyr, feeling an unbreakable bond form between them. Together, they would stand against the darkness and fight for a brighter future. The following day, they continued their journey through the labyrinth, determined to reclaim the chronicles and uncover the hidden truth of the world's creation. Though they knew that danger lurked around every corner, they pressed on with renewed determination, driven by the knowledge that their actions would determine the fate of their world. As they delved deeper into the labyrinth, the protagonist felt a growing sense of unease. He sensed something dark and powerful stirring within its depths, a force that threatened to tear them all apart. But he refused to let fear control him. Instead, he pushed onward, his resolve unshakable as they faced the challenges ahead. The protagonist clutched the time-bending tome tightly as Mira and Zephyr huddled close behind him. They were deep within the labyrinth, in a hidden alcove that held countless bookshelves filled with ancient tomes. The air was thick with dust and mystery. We must be careful, Mira warned, her voice barely above a whisper. Cal will not rest until he has what he desires. The protagonist nodded, scanning the room for any signs of danger as Zephyr flitted around him playfully. He could feel the power coursing through his veins. It was intoxicating and terrifying at once. The time-bending tome had granted him control over time itself, but the price he paid was steep. As they delved deeper into the labyrinth's heart, they stumbled upon another hidden alcove. This one contained a stone pedestal with an open book on top. Intricate carvings surrounded it, depicting scenes of creation and destruction. The protagonist felt a strange pull towards the artifact. "What is this?" he asked, his voice echoing off the ancient walls. Mira stepped forward, her eyes narrowing as she read the ancient inscriptions etched into the stone. "It appears to be another tome," she said slowly, "but I've never seen anything quite like it." Zephyr danced around the pedestal, examining the carvings from all angles. "This is a tome of creation," he declared, his voice filled with excitement. "The power within these pages could reshape our world." A cold wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing the flickering torchlight. The shadows danced wildly around them as Cal and his minions materialized from the darkness. "So you found it," he sneered, a cruel smile spreading across his face. "I've been searching for this tome since the beginning of time." The protagonist felt a surge of anger coursing through him as Cal reached out, attempting to take the time-bending tome from his grasp. He tightened his grip and pulled back, sending a wave of shadows flying backward. "You will not take what is rightfully mine," he growled, his eyes blazing with determination. Mira stepped in front of him, her body trembling slightly as she raised her staff. "Back off, Cowell," she shouted, her voice echoing through the chamber. The battle was fierce and brutal, each side fighting for control over the time-bending tome. The protagonist could feel the power within it growing stronger with every passing moment. It threatened to consume him whole, but he refused to let go. He knew that if he lost control, their world would be lost forever. As the battle raged on, Zephyr flitted between them, dodging attacks and casting spells of his own. The shadows around them grew darker, and the air was thick with tension. Finally, when all hope seemed lost, Mira unleashed a powerful spell that sent Kull flying back into the darkness from which he came. His minions scattered in retreat as the chamber filled with a sense of relief. The protagonist collapsed to his knees, exhausted and battered but victorious. He had protected the time-bending tome and saved their world for one more day. "We must continue," Mira said, her voice barely above a whisper. "There is still so much more to discover." The unseen scribe of Time's labyrinth, the labyrinth's stone corridor stretched out before them, illuminated by flickering torches and a sense of urgency that permeated the air. Mira, Zephyr, and the protagonist made their way deeper into the heart of this ancient maze, with Cowell's sinister presence still lingering in the back of their minds. They found themselves standing before another massive stone door, intricate carvings etched into its surface. Mira traced her fingers across the symbols, whispering an incantation. The door groaned open to reveal a long hallway lined with countless bookshelves. In the quiet corner of the room, they saw a small group's camp. "We have finally reached a temporary home within the labyrinth," said Mira, her eyes scanning the campsite. "Let us rest here for now." The protagonist glanced at Zephyr, who nodded in agreement. As they approached, they noticed something amiss. The camp was abandoned, with only their belongings and a single open book on top of a stone pedestal. The tome bore no title, but it seemed familiar to the protagonist, a hint from their forgotten past. "This cannot be," said Mira, her eyes widening as she approached the pedestal. "I left this camp only days ago." Zephyr floated closer to the book. "It appears someone else has been here before us," he said, flipping through its pages. "And they sought the same knowledge we do." The protagonist felt a chill run down their spine. Who could have visited this camp and taken the time-bending tome? He knew Cale would be after it, but why hadn't the adversary confronted them yet? As they pondered, Mira suddenly tensed up. "I sense something," she whispered, her voice laced with urgency. "We must prepare ourselves." Zephyr nodded, his mischievous grin fading as he took on a more serious demeanor. The protagonist stood ready, clutching the chronicles of the unseen scribe tightly to his chest. He knew they could not afford any mistakes. As if summoned by Mira's warning, an ominous shadow crept into their temporary home within the labyrinth. Shadows coalesced and formed into a familiar figure. Cal, his eyes burning with hunger for power. "You have been too slow," he sneered, his voice echoing through the chamber. "I have found the time-bending tomes." The protagonist felt anger surge within him as he took a step forward. "If you want them back, you'll have to go through us first." Cale's laughter filled the air, and his minions appeared from the shadows. The battle began. The group fought with all their might, but Cale proved to be a formidable opponent. He wielded the power of time against them, striking swiftly and mercilessly. Mira and Zephyr held their own, but it seemed that Cale's forces were too much for them to handle. In desperation, the protagonist summoned every ounce of strength he had left. He reached out with his mind, grasping at the power within the time-bending tome. A surge of energy coursed through him as he felt the artifact respond to his core. With a shout, the protagonist unleashed its power against Cale and his minions, sending them reeling back into darkness. As the dust settled, Mira and Zephyr stood over Cale's unconscious form. Their victory was short-lived, however, as they knew this was not the end of their battle. The adversary would return with more power at his disposal. "We must find a way to stop him for good," said Mira, her voice firm. "The fate of our world hangs in the balance." Zephyr nodded, and the protagonist felt renewed determination coursing through his veins. Together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, determined to uncover the hidden truth of their world's creation and protect it from those who sought to destroy it. Inside the heart of the labyrinth, our small group huddled around the remnants of their temporary camp, discussing their next steps. The protagonist, Mira, and Zephyr were wary from the grueling battle against Cal, but determination filled them all as they knew the fate of their world hung in the balance. "We cannot rest here," Mira said, her eyes reflecting a mixture of concern and resilience. "Cal will return with more power. We must find a way to stop him." Zephyr nodded, his mischievous smile fading slightly as he gazed at the time-bending tomes lying on top of a stone pedestal nearby. "I have an idea," he said, glancing at the protagonist. "But it will require a great sacrifice." "We've already made sacrifices," the protagonist replied grimly. "Tell me what you suggest." Zephyr looked around the chamber, his eyes scanning the countless bookshelves lining the walls. He pointed at a hidden alcove in another part of the labyrinth. "There is an ancient chamber filled with books about creation and time manipulation. It might contain the answers we need. But how do we get there?" Mira asked, furrowing her brows. Zephyr smirked. "We can take the time-bending tome, but it will require a great deal of energy to make the journey. We cannot afford to waste time." The protagonist looked at the book and felt the power within it calling out to him. He knew that using it would drain his life force, but he also understood the gravity of their situation. "I'll do it," he said firmly. "We have no other choice." With a deep breath, the protagonist took hold of the time-bending tome and closed his eyes, concentrating on channeling its power to create a portal to the hidden alcove within another chamber deep within the labyrinth's heart. As he did so, Mira and Zephyr held onto him tightly, bracing themselves for the journey ahead. The world around them began to blur as the protagonist's consciousness was pulled through time and space, his senses overwhelmed by a whirlwind of colors and emotions. When they finally landed, he found himself in another long hallway lined with countless bookshelves, a quiet corner of the chamber waiting for them. The group entered the ancient chamber cautiously, their eyes wide as they took in the sight before them. Towering shelves filled with dusty tomes stretched out in every direction, and at the far end, there was another stone door that led deeper into the heart of the labyrinth. "This is it," Zephyr whispered, his voice barely audible. "The answers we seek are here." As they delved further into the chamber, the protagonist felt a growing sense of unease, as if they were being watched. He glanced around nervously, his heart pounding in his chest. "Mira," he said, gripping her arm tightly. "I think Cal knows we're here." Mira's eyes narrowed as she scanned the room, her senses alert for any signs of danger. "Be ready," she warned softly. "We may not get a second chance." In that moment, a wave of shadows erupted from the corner, revealing Cal and his minions, who had tracked them to this hidden alcove within another chamber deep within the labyrinth's heart. The battle was fierce, with the protagonist once again summoning power from the time-bending tome to fend off the enemy. Mira and Zephyr fought valiantly by his side, their bond unbreakable as they held their ground against Cal and his minions. In a moment of desperation, Mira confronted Cal directly, revealing the truth about her own connection to the labyrinth's creation and the forgotten memories that intertwined with the protagonist's past. As she spoke, Cal seemed stunned, his eyes widening in shock. In the end, it was their combined efforts that allowed them to defeat Cal and his minions once more, but they knew this was only a temporary victory, as Cal would return with even greater power. With newfound resolve, the protagonist made the decision to use the time-bending tome one final time, summoning all of its power to create a portal back to their temporary camp within the labyrinth. As he did so, Mira and Zephyr held onto him tightly, bracing themselves for the journey ahead. As they returned to their camp, the protagonist felt a surge of energy coursing through his veins, but also a deep sense of exhaustion. He knew that using the time-bending tome had taken a heavy toll on his life force, and he wondered if it would be enough to continue their journey. But as they sat around the remnants of their campfire, Mira and Zephyr looked at him with determination in their eyes. "We cannot give up now," Mira said, her voice firm and resolute. "We have come too far to turn back." The protagonist nodded, his resolve strengthened by the support of his friends. "You're right," he said softly. "We will keep pushing forward until we find a way to stop Cull for good." And with that, they set out once more into the labyrinth, their steps guided by the knowledge that the fate of their world depended on them. They faced countless challenges and hardships along the way, but their bond remained unbroken as they pressed on towards a brighter future, their actions deciding the fate of their world. In the end, it was through their unity and determination that they were able to defeat Cull for good, restoring balance to the labyrinth and preserving the world's creation for generations to come. The chronicles of the unseen scribe were once again complete, chronicling their journey from forgotten time-bound scribe to heroes who saved their world. And as they stood in the heart of the labyrinth, surrounded by the countless bookshelves that lined its walls, Mira, Zephyr, and the protagonist knew they had created a legacy that would be remembered for all eternity. Their names etched into the annals of time itself, a testament to their courage, resilience, and unbreakable bond.